Greetings! Allow me to welcome you to For the Love of Fiction, the Holiday Special. This is a podcast dedicated to discussing story and character across a wide range of mediums. I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me, as ever, is my co-host, Mark Tobit.
All right, dude, how you doing?
Hey man, how's it going?
Same old, same old.
Well, as always, this is a spoiler cast. Really figured should let you guys know that I've been listening because we spoiled almost everything rotten.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is, I suppose, the first of our annual holiday specials, and we're going to get this underway by having, as always, our little catch up. So go on, Mark, tell me, what you been up to?
No, I haven't been doing too much since the last time we spoke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there have been a couple of things that have come across my radar. I watched a couple of movies of late, and that's really what I wanted to mention today. I mean, two polar opposite movies, if I have to describe them. The first of which would be Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay. I've not seen this yet. I've actually not seen the last couple of Chris Nolan. Actually, no, I did see Tenet. I've not seen the other one. What was the other one? You lent it to me, and I still haven't watched it. The war movie.
Dunkirk.
Yeah, I need to watch that. Anyway, sorry. So, Oppenheimer. Okay.
No. I'm not going to go into too much detail because, I don't know, you may at some point in your future decide you want to watch this movie.
We will do a Chris Nolan special at some point.
I see. And there are peaks and troughs when it comes to Christopher Nolan, as we're both aware.
Yes.
I think this is kind of middle of the road for him, to be honest.
Really?
I know. For me, I mean, I saw that generally the reviews skewed very positive in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally, it didn't leave as much of an impression on me.
Right. Can you elaborate why? Vaguely?
Okay, well, at the end of the day, this is a story about the creation of what is arguably the single most defining technology or a single invention of the 20th century, aside from the internet,
of course,
which defined the world's history.
Of course, yes.
And the story itself, it weaves too much. It tries to play with timelines in it, jumping back and forth between between three separate narratives that are taking place.
What, you mean characters or time or eras?
Times, specifically the development of the bomb itself at a later time during sort of like congressional hearings and so on and so forth. It kind of moves backwards and forwards, and that is on no part due to the actors. The actors themselves are quite phenomenal. The guys that are playing the role, but I feel this is a story that it could have just been left chronological and left to stand by itself.
Yeah. So, do you think that maybe they messed about with the timeline to add more dramatic impact?
Yeah, because there's a couple of climaxes that happen at different times. They wanted to deliver with a punch right at the end of the story.
Yes, and it wasn't effective for you.
Not for me, no, because it left it in places feeling a touch flat.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, the actual story itself is an immensely interesting story.
Of course, yes.
It's just I've seen this story before, even though it's a true story, and this is a dramatization of that, and everything that comes with a dramatization of historical events that are being written by the winners, and whatever you want to say about that aspect.
Yes,
I've watched this story before in another version. It was a different story, but it was the story of Alan Turing in the Imitation Game.
Oh, yes. Who was in that?
That was Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, I remember that coming out. Yes, I've never seen it.
And that was all about the development of breaking of the Enigma code at Bletchley Park, and how Alan Turing was he was the linchpin, so to speak, in terms of breaking the code, and then the politics and the espionage that had to take place before they could fully utilize this new information that they had, and that they could read the messages of the Germans and all of that. It was another key point of a war, and this story has a lot of parallels with it. So I liked Imitation Game more. I don't know if I'm saying that purely as an Englishman, and as a story about an Englishman, but that's not to say.
Sorry, let me just. Here's my take, because I am somewhat tired of Nolan's style personally. Don't get me wrong; he's made some great films, but like I kind of get the impression that like the absolute insane amount of adulation this film has received has sort of come because people are starved of great mainstream movies. And as soon as one comes out that sort of attempts something loftier, regardless of how flawed it is. I'm not saying it's flawed. I haven't seen it, but like, you know, I get the impression people just like, you know, like, oh, finally, and then like completely like, you know,
I mean, this is the thing: it's in no part a bad or terrible movie or anything. I'm not saying anything close to that, but it's been hit with a multitude of 8s and 9s, and for me, maybe it steers a little more towards a 7. It's. I'm not saying it's bad. It's still a good movie. The story itself is still immensely interesting, and there's some standout roles played by likes of Matt Damon and Robert Downey Jr.
Murphy himself, man. Come on, this guy's a great actor. Has he not got? Has he got an Oscar yet? He must have.
I imagine this might go some ways towards getting that.
He must get it. Like the guy is great. He's been an incredible actor since the very first time I saw him in anything. You know, he's superb.
This movie, I don't want to do it a disjustice. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of effort has gone into this. I just feel that a little bit too much tinkering took place in the narrative of the story.
Well, I'll say I'll give it a watch. We'll definitely discuss it at some point. I will be up for doing a Chris Nolan special at some point, a directorial special, because you know I love many of his films, but also some of his films are quite polarizing for me. So I think there's a lot of potential for discussion. Let's say, you know, I'm not someone who just blindly thinks he's the greatest director who's ever lived. You know, to my knowledge, there's only one director who's got a perfect track record, and he's not American. He's Russian, and his name is Andrei Tarkovsky. He never made a bad movie, but he didn't make many. So you know. I think that he has made a couple of stinkers. So, yeah, we'll definitely get on that. So what was the other film you saw, man?
Oh, well, this is hitting the other end of the spectrum. I saw X.
X?
Saw X.
Oh, Saw X.
Yeah. I knew that was going to lead to some sort of confusion in saying the name.
It made me think of the anime series, to be honest with you, which is a great series. I need to get hold of it and watch it.
Oh, that's the one from the past.
Yeah, mate. Tell me about it, man. One of the greatest themes ever in the history of anime. My God. It's so good. I really need to rewatch it or find it. Anyway, Saw 10.
Yes.
So... yeah, okay, what did you think? Because I'm actually a bit partial to these films myself.
I've always had a bit of a relationship with the Saw movies. I mean, the thing is, I've got a bit of an emotional connection with them because I went to see Saw 2 at the cinema with my brother.
Oh, right.
Now, his birthday is around Halloween, and it actually became a habit for us. So I remember the first time I saw the first Saw movie, and
it's a great movie, mate. It's
I still consider the first one a phenomenal piece of horror cinema.
It is great.
There is a reason it spawned an entire subgenre of horror.
The twist, mate. The twist. Oh, it's great.
And every aspect of that movie, I mean, it has got very diluted. It's become overly complicated in later.
Yes, it's when I stopped watching these films when it got to the point when he was dead. But he had set traps for after he was dead, and he was creating his protege while he was dead.
Yeah, he's got plans.
Yeah,
you're like, yeah.
I was kind of like, this is so stupid now. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I knew what I was in for. I wasn't expecting I wasn't expecting Oppenheimer. You know, when I watched it, I know what it is. But that was the point where I just went, I'm done now. Personally, you know, they're fun movies for what they are, but that's what they are. They are what they are.
Well, with this, because I've probably watched up to about the 7th one in the cinema with my brother on a yearly basis. Yeah. It became a Halloween tradition for us. So
of course,
they do hold a special place for me, even if they became somewhat terrible around sort of like the 5, 6, and 7 where it actually started to dip. Even though Carrie Yules came back, that was awesome. I do like seeing Carrie Yules out.
Wait. When did he come back?
I believe it was the 7th one.
Anything with him in, I love that guy so much.
It did instantly put it up about a notch or two on my belt. It was just
so good. Just that guy,
and even if he is still trying to do that American accent.
His American accent. He's fantastic. I love him so much. I just can't stress it. The first film I ever saw him in was not The Princess Bride.
Was it Prince of Men in Tights?
No, it was before that. It was Hot Shots Part Jerkers. He was playing the role of Val Kilmer's character, Iceman. Yeah. Oh God, that's a film that's due a rewatch soon.
Oh man, that was an era of spoof that actually did justice to the genre.
I don't know. Hot Shots 1 was great. Hot Shots 2 kind of took it almost too far. But anyway, sorry. Tell me about Saw 10. What did you think?
I really like this movie.
Yeah?
It's not quite a prequel, but it goes back in time a little bit to where Kramer is alive. and it's
same actor.
Yes, and that is to his credit because Tobin Bell is a phenomenal actor.
Yeah,
he has got so much presence. He's one of the reasons why those early movies were so watchable.
Absolutely, his voice.
And they lean into that with this one. He is in it for predominantly almost the entire movie.
Oh, right, okay.
And it parts almost becomes something of a sympathetic character.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting story, and it's apparently set the stage for there to be multiple ones set at this time period. And if they're going to continue to follow this tone, well, I'll probably keep watching them. So I don't ask for when I watch a Saw movie. I'm not asking for too much.
You know what you're in for, man. You know.
This is it. I mean, I've been burned by being expecting more in the past. Sometimes I find it's best to set your expectations low and be surprised when it comes to these movies. And there have been a couple of surprises along the saga. But yeah, that's all what really that I've been checking out that I can mention. What about yourself, man?
So I've been very busy recently, preparing for this episode specifically. So I don't have too many items. I just, we are doing our top 5 80s kids cartoons, and I have watched a lot of kids cartoons recently. That's all I'm going to say. A lot. I was actually ill last week. I'm asthmatic, as you know, and I get a free flu jab every year. But almost at some point over the course of the winter period, I'll just get one of those colds. Do you know the kind?
Yeah, when the temperature drops.
The kind of cold where you try to do stuff and you just can't. Where, like, you are uncoordinated, you're tired, everything is in slow motion, and you're just trying to get on with your day, whether it's go to work, whether it's get up and write, or whatever you do, or I do, and you just have to go, fuck it. Back to bed.
Yep.
You know, when I have a bad cold, I do tend to I just turn into like a snack monster. I just need sugar. I just need so much, and coffee, sugar and coffee. I just need so much of it. So I went to the shop quickly, got myself a packet of biscuits, made myself a giant coffee, got into bed, and I watched kids' cartoons all day like a 5-year-old.
There are worse ways to live, man.
It was, it's great. I managed to beat the cold pretty quickly, but yeah, so mainly what I've been up to is watching kids' cartoons. I did, however, manage to beat a white whale of mine. So, the 16-bit era, of video games, SNES, Mega Drive, whatnot, games were harder back then, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's even a terminology of Nintendo hard, isn't there?
Yes, that's mainly for the NES era, but yes.
But I think that this was off the back of that, where games were still quite brutal to you.
Well, one of these games I'm about to talk about is a game that comes from that era and is regarded as being Nintendo hard. And, oh, God. I've written an article about it for the website. Because this year is the 30th anniversary of the release of the original Jurassic Park film.
Bloody hell.
30 years, man.
I saw that in the cinema.
Me too. I can still remember jumping out of my seat during the raptor chase sequence in the kitchen.
Yeah. On this big screen, we'd never seen anything like that before.
The sound design as well, the screeching and whatever. You can't. Yeah. You have to have been there. And to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park, Limited Run Games have released a retro compilation of the games that were released around the era. And one of those games, the game I'm going to talk about now, is Jurassic Park for the Super Nintendo. Did you ever see this one or hear about this one or play it?
Was that the top-down one where you were Alan Grant running around?
That's correct.
I do remember seeing. I think I saw it advertised.
It was a very popular game. It was made by Ocean Software, who are notorious for making like hard 8-bit games. But yes, this is a game that sort of uses the top-down gameplay of Zelda, has like the item collecting, keycard collecting, item exploration elements of Zelda, and instead of dungeons like in Zelda, you go into buildings and it turns into like an incredibly ropey first-person section, which was terrifying as a kid. And like, not only was there no in-game map, but there was no save feature.
Oh, fuck!
No save feature, no passwords. Apparently, a developer oversight. Like, you had to sit there and complete the game in one go. It was and I'm telling you now, man, this is not like Zelda. Start the game, go to one dungeon, beat it, get the item, go to another dungeon, beat it, get the next. It's systematic. It's go to an area, get trapped, leave, go somewhere else, get trapped, find a key, go to another area, find the key, and then back and forward. It was just, oh my God. But it is a great game, because it really captured the essence of the film, even though it's on the Super Nintendo and very simplistic. I just remember it being so immersive and replicating the feel of the film, the atmosphere of the film, even though it doesn't use the John Williams score. So anyway, I got this collection.
No, they don't. They don't actually use the iconic theme or anything in it.
No, none of the music from the film's in it. None of it.
That is surprising, considering you got the license. I would have thought they. I mean, I suppose 8-bit chip. What's the word terminology they use? A chip tune.
I think they made the game while the film was in production, and it had to be released for when the film came out, and they probably hadn't scored the film yet. The soundtrack is actually amazing though. But yes, I finally beat it. It's a white whale of mine.
Congratulations, man.
I used a guide. I used 100% guide and followed it to the notes. And according to my Switch timer, it took about 5 hours. That's it.
Not bad.
And this is a game that lasted kids my age months. I mean months, dude.
It's the blind exploration that normally comes with a game like that.
It's just not being able to save us, having to restart it over and over again. But in those days, games did last us that long, didn't they? So
yeah, because the memory cards really turned up with the PlayStation, didn't it?
Well, there was battery backup for a lot of games in those days. With Zelda had saves, Mario had saves. It was a developer oversight. It's insane. But yeah. So I finished that, and that was a great moment for me. Yes, fuck you, But I also. A film I watched, which I've been meaning to rewatch for years. In a previous episode, I talked about sneakily watching horror films on Sky around someone's house, and I can't remember what film it was I mentioned, but this time around I watched The Blob, the 1988 remake. You've seen this one?
I believe I have, a long time ago. Yeah, it's about the giant amorphous slime.
Yes. This is a remake as well, and I tell you. It holds up. It really holds up. I remember being really disturbed by it as a kid because it doesn't pull any punches. It kills characters. You know how you kill characters who you make out a character to be a main character, then you kill them off. It's to create tension. You give a character enough exposure to try to influence the viewer / reader into thinking, oh, they're the main character, they're safe. Then you kill them off. And this film does it so well, and and the gore is actually quite effective. Still, it's actually written by Frank Darabont, by the way. Interestingly enough, the director of The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Mist. So yeah, dude, I'm telling you now, you can find it very easily online on YouTube.
Well, I think the fact you say Darabont's attached to it certainly piqued my interest.
I actually, if you fancy a horror movie, you should absolutely give it a go. It's an hour and a half long, expertly paced, really swift, really gory, quite funny. It's got the jocks, it's got the 80s kids, it's got even the female main character played by Shawnee Smith, who has been in quite a few things. Is actually quite a good female lead as well. Has agency, does stuff, doesn't really make too many stupid choices for the most part. In actual fact, it's the kids that make the stupid choices in this, and as they are kids, by the way, so it makes sense. So, give it a go. Give it a go.
Yeah, give it a go. You have certainly twisted my arm.
It's 95 minutes long. It's a very quick watch. I absolutely love it. When I was a kid, it scared the crap out of me. There's a sequence of a phone box that actually I'd never forgot. And a sequence in the sewers. I don't want to say what they are because I don't want to spoil it. So, definitely give this one a go at some point, man, if you get time.
Will do.
Cool. Love to hear what you think. So, yeah, anyway, that's enough of the intro. For the next section of the podcast, me and Mark are going to be laying down our top 5 80s kids cartoons from the 80s. Can't wait for that one, mate. I've been researching my arse off for this. Probably too much.
I, on the other hand, have not done any research.
Oh, no.
But I'm going to be drawing purely on my memories of nostalgia.
I might upset you today.
I'm going to be honest. I do think that a couple of these things. I mean, there were a couple of things that I researched back due to some other parts we're doing on this podcast.
Yes.
And apparently, my memories are not as strong as I thought they were.
Almost all this stuff you can watch on YouTube for free, mate. So,
Yeah. I was researching some toys and stuff from the past, and
Yeah.
it turns out they're not exactly as I remember them.
No, they're not, mate.
Your mind does strange things with the toys you used to play with and the cartoons you used to watch. They become so much more in your memory until you realise, no, that was just the intro.
Yeah.
So
Indeed. And then after that section, me and Mark are going to be letting off the reins and chilling out, having a beer or two, just sort of reminiscing really about all those awesome toys we got as kids. So looking forward to that one as well. And in that regard, we will be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. So, Mark, been a lot leading up to this one. We talked about it a little while ago. I told you to have a think about it. I've done a lot of research for this. And we're going to be going through our top 5 80s kids cartoons. Oh, exciting stuff, don't you think?
Absolutely. This was something that brought back a lot of memories. We discovered a couple of old cartoons that I realised have been living rent-free in my head for a long time.
Yes, absolutely. I have always been a purveyor of nostalgia. So to tell you the truth, just today, I finally got hold of a vintage G1 hot rod sat on next to my computer. Been looking forward to getting hold of him again for a long time. But so this top 5, we are going to use the same rules as we did with our top 5 Batman voice actors. However, that sort of ended up it's turned into a mess. We must stick to the rules this time. So
I will do my best. I don't fully understand them, but I'll do my best.
Rules. These are the rules, right? We're gonna count down our top 5, and basically, I will reveal my top 5 to you. And if my top 5 is higher in your list, we will talk about it when we get it to your list. So the higher the item, the later we talk about it.
Fair enough.
So the idea being is that the higher in the list, the more prestige it has, the later in the show we go over it. I will do a coin flip actually as well, like last time. So I think let's just Google coin flip simulator again. So I suppose a bit of context regarding what kids' cartoons are still important to me. They were always very important to me, obviously. But I do, I've never stopped being into some of these kids' cartoons. Let's put it this way. Obviously, many of these kids' cartoons were created to advertise toys. And so often, but not always, storytelling and characterization, which is, of course, the point of this podcast, take a backseat to getting the next toy in the next episode. Correct, Mark?
Yeah, this is something that was playing on my mind when I was actually considering my list myself. First instinct is to assess it through your current mind's eye, and as a mature, with a bit more of a defined palette, if you want to refer to it that as, in terms of storyline, and I realise that's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, well, hold your horses. So what I can say about my top 5 is that in each of these TV shows, there is at least one episode that is well written that I could actually turn around, and I think confidently I could turn around and say to someone, watch this, because you might find something here, Not all, like I said, not often, because they go through the monster of the week, toy of the week stuff, but every now and then, like a banging episode will slip through the net, and it'll be like full of really good storytelling, character arcs, real narrative processes, even Freytag's Pyramid, which is, if you've never heard of Freytag's Pyramid, you never heard of it. So basically, Freytag's Pyramid supposedly is the map to which all great stories follow. And so you just imagine a pyramid. The top of it, you put like ascended action. On the way up, on the left-hand side, is rising action, and on the way down is a descending action. And basically, a great narrative will have multiple pyramids that go through this the story will go through a period of rising action, reach a crescendo, then calm down again on the way back down, then start rising up again, then crescendo, then down again. In a sense, you could say instead of narrative arcs, you could say narrative pyramid. How about that? So,
okay, I get
yeah,
where you're coming from. Yeah,
but it's a real thing. Look it up. I mean, if everyone wrote their stories to the pattern of Freytag's pyramid, then it'd all be the same. So obviously, but it's a guideline. We're taught it in uni, but it's everywhere. I'm pretty sure Joseph Campbell talks about it as well in the Hero of a Thousand Faces and whatnot. So yeah. Anyway, point being is that my criteria has always been regarding this top 5 is that the show has got to have an episode that I would say has good literary qualities. Among, there's other things like, you like the characters, you like the animation, you like the designs, because, like kids' cartoons are a visual medium. It's about advertising toys, really. So, that stuff as well is there. So what about you?
Well, I cycled through all of those things myself when I was doing some quiet contemplation over what I considered good and what it was that I liked about these shows. And I decided by the best metric, it'd be how much it impacted me as a kid. In terms of how much it influenced me wanting to have the toys, wanting to pretend to be the characters when I was playing.
Yes,
and
yes.
These are the ones that stayed with me the most.
Yes.
And yeah, it once I took that mind frame on, it totally swung around my list.
Interesting.
Shows that hadn't been on the list before, I suddenly realised, no, you have a place here.
Okay, cool. Because I say, like, my list went through a process of 1, 2, and 3 was pretty much set in stone. 4, I'm denial about. 5, the position of 5 was a fight. It was a big fight. And it took a long time. And it wasn't until I really looked at my criteria of, like, there being at least one episode with a good narrative that I had to go, no, that's it. That's it. So, okay then. So,
I also clarify that this list is by no means set in stone for me either. This in 6 months' time, a year time, my reflection on this could totally change. It's how I feel at the present time, but it's because there's so
I know.
many.
Well, once we've done the top 5, we'll do honourable mentions. Truth is, though, when I was going through this, my honourable mentions is about 20. So I'm going to do 5 honourable mentions, potentially. We'll see. But after we've counted down the 5 to 1. So, are you ready to go? Okay, ready then. Let's flip a coin then. You want to call it?
Certainly. I'll call heads.
Tails. Okay, so I'm going to go first. Right, so number 5 on my list is Dungeons and Dragons. Do you have this on your list?
I
don't? Okay. Was it in your honourable mentions?
I would have mentioned it, yes.
Okay. So this is, as it often will be the case of many of these cartoons, a Marvel production and animated in Japan. There wasn't, as such, a toy line that went around the cartoon, as far as I can remember. And it focuses on a group of 6 friends who are lost in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, a fantasy world. They go on a ride and they just end up trapped in this land of monsters and skeletons and goblins and whatnot. And with the help of the character of the Dungeon Master, they're basically trying to escape. That's the basic narrative of the overall story. Did you watch this as a kid?
Yeah, I think I had 1 or 2 episodes recorded on video.
Can you remember those episodes?
The Eye of the Beholder.
Oh, right. Now, the Beholder's that's actually a thing from the...
Yeah, I think it was about a character, the creature Beholder.
Yes.
I remember that much.
Yes.
It's a very distinctive creature that has a giant eye and...
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Beauty's in the Eye of the Beholder. I think the name of the episode was, or something to that tune.
I can't remember. I actually have it on DVD. I need to actually watch it all the way through.
Well, that's the one unfortunate thing about that show, isn't it?
What's that?
It never had an ending.
That's right. They were going to do a season 4, and there was going to be a complete final ending, and then the show was cancelled. But the script is out there.
So, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's out there. It was going to be a true ending. So, But yeah, to summarize what I loved about this show, I I love the characters, most of them. You've got Hank, who is the ranger, and then there's the acrobat, isn't there, and the knight, and the thief. But Bobby, the barbarian, the young boy, he really irritated me. And
he's got some real Scrappy Doo energy right there.
Yeah, I hate Scrappy Doo as well. I hate him so much. Always have done. And also Uni, obviously voiced by Frank Welker, his pet baby unicorn.
Holy shit! What?
Going, oh, come on, man. I'm gonna be saying this a lot. He was like, they were really annoying. But what made this show so good for me personally were the villains. You had Tiamat, voiced by Frank Welker, was an awesome, fearsome, five-headed dragon, and the sole creature powerful enough to stand up against the actual main antagonist of Dungeons & Dragons, who is, of course, Venger. And I kind of like this dynamic where you've got the antagonist, Venger, who is, fighting with the kids, and he's like the son of the dungeon master, as is revealed at a certain point in the series. But all the while, he's not the most powerful character in the show. There's always this other greater power. And there's this great episode, and this is what I was talking about earlier on about these shows having like that one great episode. The most famous episode of the show, which I believe caused complaints from parents, was called The Dragon's Graveyard, where the characters become so fed up with Venger, like stopping them from escaping, that Hank, their leader, the ranger, just becomes... a completely character of complete agency, let's say, and just says, I'm done. You know what? I'm done. Because like the status quo of this show is they're trying to escape, Venger fights them, they fight Venger, they beat Venger, but they don't escape. And it happens over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Hank goes, no more. I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. We have to beat Venger completely. We have to kill Venger. And they basically say, like, it ends up being that they go to Tiamat, this great five-headed dragon, and they go, we want to kill Venger. We want to finish him. I've had enough. And there's something about the voice acting. It's a great performance by the actor who plays Hank. There's a great urgency and determination in his voice. It's just, you just believe it. I am so done. I'm like, wow, I mean, not even... in many cartoons in the 80s, this never happened. Heroes didn't just go, I'm going to kill the villain. I can't take this anymore. And it literally gets to the point in this episode where Venger is trapped. Hank has his bow and arrow, and he actually has it on him, and he's about to kill him. And it's so intense. And he's going to do it. And it's the other characters in the party that are like, Hank, we can't do this. You can't. We're as bad as him. I'm telling you now, mate. It's brilliant. Have you seen this episode? Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
I honestly recommend watching it if you can find it. You will be surprised. It is brilliant. Okay, so what was your number 5?
Oh, my number 5 was He-Man.
Not on my list.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it. The thing about He-Man, I mean, first and foremost, it was the very first cartoon I've got memory of actually watching.
I can probably say I'm in the same boat as you there, actually, because it was before many of the other cartoons on this list. 82, I want to say. Was it 81, maybe? Very early.
83.
Okay, year I was born.
Yeah. September 83. Ran for 2 seasons, each with 65 episodes, and it is considered to be the most successful series released by Funimation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's had its fair spin-offs, and it's been rebooted a series of times. It's existed in comics and all that, but that first cartoon... as it is, the story itself isn't that complex. However, he was my definitive first superhero as a child, and it stayed with me. Mm-hmm. I mean, one concept I've always loved is the aspect of the hero transformation.
Yes.
Holding the sword aloft and by the power of Grayskull and all that good stuff. And that's something that's transferred into a lot of the stuff I like in later media, whether it be like Goku turning Super Saiyan or something.
Yeah.
All of that, that kind of style of sort of like the hero ascending a level or becoming something stronger. I've always liked that in any sort of medium.
Okay.
And yeah, and also the dynamic of He-Man and Skeletor, whilst it is dripping with homoeroticism through the current sort of like modern eye, I still found something primal about that, and I enjoyed watching them fight.
Skeletor as a character in the cartoon has actually become like even more famous in social media though because of the memes and stuff. I actually think Skeletor as the comedy character is actually better as than he was a villain in the cartoon, personally.
That's something I'm going to refer to a bit later on with a couple of other these shows, but it is often the case that a show will start strong with their big bad being a real kind of like warlord style or some sort of tyrant or overlord, and then later on in the story they are relegated to a bit more of a comical element because they realise that you can't lean too hard into the evil. You've got to give your villain a bit of a soft side sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I'll attribute this to a couple of other characters later on in this list as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just enjoyed He-Man. It was just, as I say, my first cartoon.
I had the toys and I watched the cartoon, but I am more of a fan of the Dolph Lundgren movie.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. I had the Merlin sticker album and everything.
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a... wow. I've forgotten about... I mean, like, Merlin sticker albums, yes, but... Oh, yes, I had that too. Wow. I'm pretty sure my dad completed it for us, me and Adam, actually. Wow.
Yeah, I went back when you used to get like packs of 6 stickers, and you had to sort of like swaps and all that. Just like so, got need, and when you were going for other people's stacks of stickers.
Yeah, I used to love it. Yeah. But like I think maybe because just by proxy that I watched this film so much, for me, I prefer it. I'll
give the movie credit. I mean, in terms of the sheer scale they were going for on such a shoestring budget, they actually achieved quite a lot.
I mean, let's get down to business here. It is basically a rip-off of Star Wars. You know, they added loads of like stormtroopers and whatever, you know. But I don't know. As I may have mentioned before on this podcast, my father was heavily into movie scores, which influenced me, which is why I always talk about movie scores. And even though the main theme of this is it's a copy of Holst's The Planets. Mars, I want to say Mars, but anyway, you know, my dad had the soundtrack on vinyl. You know, we had our swords and we'd hold the sword up and whatever. You know, but you know, Frank Langella as Skeletor. Oh my god!
Oh yes, utterly committed.
To yeah, you know, we need. This was about cartoons, not films. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get to is, yes, maybe just due to proxy and overuse and abuse. Yeah, He-Man, I prefer the film to the cartoon. That might be sacrilege to a lot of people out there, but just the way it went as a kid. So, okay, number 4. So this one actually has a connection to what you just mentioned. My number 4 is Brinstar.
I don't have that on my list.
Ever seen it? Ever heard of it?
I'm familiar with it. I never leaned too hard into it. Like I was aware that it existed. I saw the toys being advertised, but I never really watched the show that much.
Well, the show was a bit of a disaster because, like, they had the cartoon, but the film, which was I think was supposed to be released in the cinema, came out like a year after the cartoon started, and
they made a Brinstar movie.
No, a cartoon movie, and it came out after the toys and whatnot. I had the movie on VHS, and I had. Me and my brother both had a Brinstar figure, I want to say. And definitely a Tex Hex figure. I'll get to Tex Hex in a minute. And I think I had 1 or 2 episodes of the show recorded on tape. But anyway, Brinstar is a space western from the makers of He-Man, Filmation. It's actually the last cartoon that Filmation made, because they went bust afterwards. So, I don't know whether or not it's going to be mentioned on this list. But Brinstar is quite similar to a couple of other cartoons, let's say science fiction westerns, let's say. And for me,
I will say one other that Brinstar kind of referenced a little bit that I felt.
What's that?
Was the Phantom. In terms of the concept of his abilities, where he could tune himself into different animals and stuff like that. I always felt that was very similar to the Phantom.
I can't remember whether or not the Phantom does that in the original comics. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. I'm pretty sure that was added to Defenders of the Earth.
Oh, fair enough then.
You know, when he says, give the strength of 10 tigers, isn't it?
Yeah.
I actually am. I do. Defenders of the Earth is not in my top 5. But,
me neither.
But I do like the Phantom quite a lot as a character. I've read the comics as a kid. I am quite partial to the 90s film as well. But ironically, I've forgotten about that. Because when I think of Speed of the Puma, Strength of the Bear, Eyes of the Hawk, I think of Bravestar. And that is one of the things that makes... It's very similar to He-Man in that regard, right? You get a character that shouts something and then gets powers.
Yeah.
Very similar in that regard. But for me, with Bravestar, it's just like He-Man. It had great voice acting, you know? And while the cartoon does, the TV series anyway, does sort of enter like a rotating series of moral lessons for kids, which is kind of grating, I think the movie's pretty good. I think the movie has a pretty good setup. Something else that I will be mentioning that I like in my cartoons is at least an element of tragedy and setup. You know, a hook that gets me invested straight away. This cartoon is happening because of this, you know, and, you know, Bravestar happens because their homeworld is destroyed. You know, he's like the last survivor of his race, and then there's the shaman as well, and they end up going elsewhere. It kind of copies Dune in a sense that there's this like desert planet which has got a resource that is needed, but as I said, it's the characters that make it. I wouldn't say like the characters are deep personally, but they are like well acted, well designed, and identifiable. Bravestar himself in the movie has an arc. He gets his butt kicked by the villain at one point, and not just by his villain, but by his partner. So there's Tex Hex. This is... I wonder if my brother remembers this. You remember Tex Hex the character?
I've got vague memories of, yeah.
Purple-skinned, red-eyed zombie cowboy.
Yeah, there he is.
This character gave me nightmares. No idea how. Because it's not scary at all when you watch the cartoon back. In the movie, he's more of a threat. In the actual TV series, he's not a threat. But I don't know. I can remember just this character giving me nightmares. The red eyes, and I think like my Tex Hex figure came alive. Maybe I'm not sure. I can't remember. But you know, when Bravestar becomes the marshal of New Texas, he you know, through his own weakness, he ends up being defeated, and he has to go and find like this special weapon to help him defeat Tex Hex. He goes and finds this special weapon. It's like a giant gun. He finds it. It's not a gun because it belongs to this giant cybernetic horse called 3030 that can stand on its back two legs and beat the hell out of you.
Yeah, I do distinctly remember the horse.
You remember, yeah, the best character ever. And they had this great rapport. In the end, he beats the hell out of Bravestar, but Bravestar ends up using his powers and sort of manages to fight back. They become buddies and whatever, and they go back and save the day, etc., etc., etc. But it's about him finding, you know, 3030 becoming friends. Also, main villain, do you remember Stampede?
I don't. No.
Giant zombie ball, cybernetic enhancements, humongous. No?
Nope.
I thought this was scary. I actually thought this was like really intense and crazy. So, but yeah, specifically for the movie and for the character arc, the music is what I really like. It's just, I think it's just very memorable. It's always really stuck with me. And when I went back and I watched the film on YouTube, a lot of the episodes are on there legally. I found it a good watch. I thought, you know, this kind of holds up. You know, the toys were not a success in the slightest, unfortunately. So it didn't really go anywhere further.
Well, we don't get much in the way of the whole Western style in current media these days, do we? It's something considered to be somewhat of a dead genre.
It is, yes. I mean, my dad being, you know, of his age, was massively into Westerns as a kid. So I imagine him sharing Bravestar with me and Adam was, you know, part of sharing his heritage, maybe. Or maybe he just liked cartoons. I think that's probably more likely, actually. And toys. So, but yeah. Number 4 for me, Mark, is Bravestar. What's your number 3?
My number 4, you mean?
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Good thing you're here. What's your number 4?
Okay, that would be Visionaries.
Okay.
So, have you got that on your list?
Not in my list.
Now, Visionaries left an impression on me. I had distinct memories of watching it as a child, and it stayed with me in terms of a show that I watched, I immensely enjoyed as a child, and that was that. So, for the purposes of this show, I very much went back and did some research, and I was shocked to find that it was only 13 episodes.
Right, it was short.
Yeah, it really was. It came out in 1987. It was made by Sunbow Productions.
Yeah, pretty sure it's Marvel Sunbow again, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and they were tied in with a lot of the comics and stuff like that. And it has gone through a couple of attempted
revivals. Yeah,
but never with that much success. But I really like the idea of this show. I mean, I went back and watched the pilot recently just to polish up on this, and I realized that it's the pilot that I have the strongest memories of watching in this.
Yes,
it's a really good show. I mean, it's got the concept of knights, or what's to go back even further. It's a futuristic world, which isn't Earth, that undergoes a solar flare that ends up wiping out all technology and forcing a once utopian, technologically advanced civilization to regress back to a more medieval feudal system.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, a wizard by the name of Merklin, of all things.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's something like Merlin, isn't it?
It's close, but legally distinct, I imagine. So. But he appears and grants several individuals, both allied good and evil, with abilities and powers tied to magic. And it forms in the form of animal totems that they have on their chests, and they can actually turn into these animals. Another transformation thing, actually, thinking about it. And one thing I did notice whilst I was watching the show is that it does borrow a lot of the archetypes from the likes of Transformers.
Well, let's go there. I don't think it's specifically Transformers. I just think like it being probably designed by many of the many similar people, character-wise. They just like use very specific character traits and tropes to make them identifiable to children.
Yeah. To the point where it's... I mean, for instance, you've got Leoric, for instance.
Let me just stop you there, sorry. Many of the same voice actors as well as what does it. You know, I'm pretty sure the cowardly, annoying villain is voiced by Chris Latta, who is obviously Starscream, and in everything, you know, he pretty much plays the same character in almost every show he's in, almost.
This is the thing, it's just... I mean, a lot of these characters, you've got like Leoric and Darkstorm, and watching the show again, it did crack me up when they were being allocated their animals. Where you've got like, right, yeah, you're the leader of the good guys, you get Lion. You're the leader of the bad guys, you get the Mollusk.
Of course, yeah. Oh, do you know what? So I rewatched this as well, and sorry, I do apologize for interrupting you.
No, go for it.
But I'm not the biggest fan of Visionaries. I think that it's more successful as a toy than it is a cartoon. But the best bit is when they're all given their powers and all the characters sort of react to it, especially the villains. Yeah, especially the villains. Like, what?
For your cowardice and boot-licking, I grant you the scampering beetle. What? I shall have you to taste my blade.
Yeah, something like that. It is really good. Really, really good.
It is. It's cheesy in all the good ways.
I never quite got why... What was the main character's name for the hero side?
Leoric,
that's it. The thing that I never got on with Leoric was that he had a Tom Selleck Freddie Mercury moustache.
Very much so. It was magnificent.
To me, that wasn't cool as a kid. That just wasn't cool. I was like, this guy's got a moustache. I was like, weird. It just didn't endear him to me. I had the Leoric figure. He had a whip, didn't he? The main hero had a whip. I was kind of like, ah.
Yeah, you feel like your main hero should have a sword. I don't know if it's
that's right. I mean, let's be honest, we're kids, and like as I just mentioned, the design work in some of these cartoons is about communicating ideas effectively enough for children to understand them. You know, and hero has sword, maybe. You know, villain has crossbow. You know, cowardly weapon, dagger. You know, I found it quite weird that he had a whip, but. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, and I also thought the staffs were cool as well.
Yes, yes. This was the toys. It was a better toy than a cartoon show. I loved the hologram chest plates and the hologram staves that you would like move and they'd move, and you know, I can't. If you see a picture of it, I don't know how they're made or whatever, but they're holograms, aren't they? And you sort of look left and right, and the image changes in them, doesn't it? It goes from here, green and black often, and very cool, very very cool concept.
Yeah. So that was my number 4.
Excellent. Cool. Yeah, I had a few of the Visionary toys. I definitely had the Auric, brand new. I reckon my brother had one of them, probably one of the villains.
My favourite one was always Witterquick.
Which one was that? Describe it to me.
He was the cheetah one. He was in red and white.
Oh, red and white. Yeah, he had actually cool armor. I liked his armor. That's another thing as well. Like the Oryx, he had a helmet where you could see his face, whereas a lot of the other characters had like armor where you couldn't quite see all their face. I had a couple of the other characters actually secondhand. I remember having one of the vehicles, and like it was like a plane kind of thing, and the wings had like the giant holographic sticker on it as well.
Oh yeah, they could summon animals as well.
Yes,
so,
yes.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, then cool. Very different list so far. So, my number 3, which I am going to hazard a guess that you will not have seen this because it's quite niche, is a show called Mighty Orbots.
I'm not familiar with it.
One of us acquired a VHS tape of this show, and it was like the first 4 episodes, like edited into a movie, probably from a boot sale or something. And I've always been partial to like the combiner robot stories.
Gestalt-bots, right.
As we call it now. Yeah, the Gestalt and Transformers. You know, we have like 5 robots, and we get like each one forms.
I suppose Voltron is the one you really kind of refer to back in most of them.
That's probably the most like fourth with one to us, to kids of our generation. But
or Power Rangers. Yeah.
That's later. The 80's is Voltron, isn't it? But for me, Orbots. This cartoon was just so ahead of everything else, almost ahead of everything else. There's one more it's not ahead of on my list, I would say, in terms of its production values and style. Just like, well, let me just give you a quick rundown. It's a 1984 Super Robot series, and it was, unlike many of these other cartoons we're talking about, it wasn't a translated Japanese import. It was actually like a joint project between companies TMN Entertainment and Intermedia Entertainment. It was joint USA and Japan. And it was a dedicated show before there was even a toy. No toys to promote it whatsoever. I mean, that was like suicide, right? For like kids' cartoons. Surely, amazingly, Dungeons and Dragons survived, didn't it? But I don't think Dungeons and Dragons was ever as big as, you know, Transformers or Turtles or Ghostbusters or whatever, because it didn't have a toy. But D&D lasted for 3 seasons. Mighty Orbots didn't. There was only 13 episodes, but with stunning animation, big names on the writing and artist crews. I believe like a lot of the animation was done by, you know, famous Japanese creators. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. You know, if we ever do a deep dive on these, I will go further into it. But yeah, you've got like the idea of like smaller robots that form a giant robot and then do battle. But what sets Mighty Orbots apart is the characters. You know, each, the 2 legs, the body, and the 2 arms. They're all really different, really identifiable characters, and the voice acting is absolutely top notch. You've got Tor, the body, who's a bit ape-like, and he's sort of, I'm not going to attempt to the voice, but he's really arrogant, really snooty, but a bit of a brute, and he's really funny. And you've got Bort, who's one of the arms, and he's like really anxious, and he can like transform like his body into different things. The legs are like 2 sisters, Bo and Boo, and they have their own powers. And then you have my spirit animal, Crunch, who's just about eating. Crunch, he's the man. What I think makes the show really cool is that it's not just a question of like big enemy appears, robots fight, they get beaten, they form together, and then they punch enemy until they die. Pretty much every threat they face brings something different to the table, and they usually have to do something interesting or clever or smart that utilizes their powers in interesting ways. The creator of the Orbots, Rob, who's actually voiced by the same guy who did Donatello in the Turtles, like essentially pilots them, you could say, when they're together, and it's often down to him using his smarts to solve situations. I always remember as a kid being disappointed that there weren't enough punching battles, you know? I remember there's at the beginning of episode 2, there's like a fight between the Mighty Orbots combined and like another monster, and it's like a proper one-on-one kaiju battle, And it's the beginning of the show. It's the beginning, you know? And then it goes into this different... Because the characters have their own traits, their strengths and weaknesses and wants and ideas, often each episode deals with these characters and their wants and ideas and plays with them and puts them in different difficult situations that, you know, brings out their personality even further. I'd say it's a damn good show. And the saddest thing about it is that it ended because the makers were sued by Tonka, the makers of GoBots.
Was it similar?
No.
And isn't GoBots kind of...
Like, so GoBots is based on Machine Robo, which actually came out before Transformers in Japan.
I don't think GoBots has got a case there.
but the point is, yeah, in the end, I think it was a matter of the fact that like the GoBots were coming in second, and they were just trying to get rid of all competition.
Yeah.
Whereas Transformers was running high and not caring and making loads of money. So it's a real shame. It's a real shame. You know, it's very well written. It might lean a bit too heavy on the puns sometimes, and sometimes the puns work and sometimes the puns don't. When it does work, it's very funny. You know, there's a character in it called Ono whose gimmick is she says "Oh no" all the time, and like, you know, it depends on the kind of person you are whether you be annoyed by that or not. I kind of find it endearing because she's kind of endearing. You know, there's like this. We talk about showing and not telling often on the pod, and there's a narrator who like is constantly talking about what's going on. And I think maybe for kids, because the storylines are quite complex, it's quite effective. As an adult, it's kind of funny because it gives it this kind of this vibe. Like the soundtrack as well is like, it's got a great opening theme, as many of his cartoons do. But the actual score itself has kind of got this 70s bass jazz vibe to it, and then and then like the narration on top of it really gives it its own flavor and character. I never forgot it. You know, I saw it probably in the late 80s, and you know, we never had the toys because there were none. But it was one that always stuck with me, always. So, yeah. Number 3, Mighty Orbots, and so to you, sir.
Okay, well, talking about awesome intro music. This is probably, out of this entire list, this intro music is probably my favourite. And that'd be for Thundercats.
Oh, I really thought you were going to say something else then. I really did. I really, really did. So, Thundercats is not in my top 5.
Ah. I really like Thundercats. But it took me a long time to realise that a lot of what I liked about Thundercats was in the intro sequence.
Yes.
Because it is one of the most badass intro sequences
ever. It's very good. It's the music, the vibe, it's got
the power guitars, you've got the introduction of the villain, and everything just looks epic. And I will say that once it gets into the actual show itself, maybe the animation steps down a touch.
Always was the case, though. They always put more money into the intro. I mean, I just talk about Mighty Orbots having amazing animation. The first 2 episodes have amazing animation. And then after about episode 3, the animation quality clearly dips. And you end up looking at the intro going, wow, this intro is amazing. And then the show starts, you're like, ooh, not so good. But anyway.
Well, with Thundercats, we're looking at a show that ran for 4 seasons, about 130 episodes, released in 1985.
It went on for a long time. It was big, yeah.
It's made by Rankin Bass. As I say, this show, I mean, it's an ensemble cast of characters of a feline-style species of creatures that escape from a doomed planet and settle down on a new planet, build themselves a base, and start just trying to survive. At which point, I believe it starts off with actually Lion-O, the main character, as a young boy in the pilot.
Yes.
And he goes through accelerated aging and actually grows up into a full-on adult and becomes the leader they need him to be.
And Obi-Wan Kenobi's like a spirit, isn't he? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was his name?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like joking.
But he even borrowed the blue glow and everything from that. Yeah.
Was his name Jeddah, I want to say? Is that?
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, not too far from Jedi. Yeah.
No, that's weird. I never put them together.
Yeah. Now you mention it.
Yeah.
But this show was cool. It was everything about it I just found really cool, even except for maybe Schnuff. So, but the characters themselves, like Panthro, Tigra, Chitara, and even Wily Kit and Wily Cat, were really interesting. And I've read some of the follow-up stuff in the expanded universe as to what happens later. I mean, I'm not saying it's canon, but canon is tricky when it comes to shows like this. And it actually had stories where Wily Kit and Wily Cat have grown into full adults and have started to become the next generation. And you've got Lion-O with a beard as an older man.
Yes.
Who's a lot more sort of like measured and a lot more kind of wizened and experienced, shall we say. And they were cool stories. The vehicles, the toys, everything about it I wanted. I wanted the Sword of Omens. I wanted the Gauntlet. And I never got it. I think I might spouse about this a bit later on.
In the future.
or in the past.
It's a funny one to me, because I found Mum-Ra probably the most interesting character in it.
It was always cool when he transformed.
Yeah. But I never really, I don't know, Panthro was cool, the tank, Panthro and his nunchucks, just remember the nunchucks, the little hands on them, they were cool.
Yeah, and you had like Tiger at the...
Apart from the setup, I don't really remember anything story-wise that jumps out at me.
Oh, they did develop it further with new characters coming later.
Yes, I remember that, yes. Yes, more toys. Unfortunately, this is one that's not easy to access without paying, which is not something I was willing to do. If we ever end up doing an episode dedicated to Thundercats in the future, then I would look into it. But this is not one you can find on YouTube, unfortunately, to watch.
I know they did try to reboot it not too long ago as well.
In the noughties, I heard mixed opinions. My father liked it, and a lot of people I know liked it because it had it was really attempting to tell a story, but the problem is that it was too different from what people remembered, so they didn't watch it, and it was not the right sort of cartoon for kids at the time. But no, Thundercats. I knew it would be in there somewhere. I knew it was always one of your favourites. So yes.
Once again, somewhat of a transformation aspect. The way in which he summons everyone, the way in which he holds the sword aloft and summon them, and all their eyes would glow, and then they'd suddenly get like a power boost of sorts.
Oh yes. The sword was designed as well, wasn't it? On the hilt, it had like those curves, so you could look through it.
Yes,
that was cool. That was cool. I could really do with rewatching this. I imagine the pilot is probably quite strong because it's got, as often is the case with many of these cartoons, there's a setup and a payoff. But it's whether or not the show tells enough interesting stories later on in the episodic narrative of the seasons. So I can't really comment. But lots of cool ideas nonetheless. So your number 3, that wasn't it? Thundercats, yeah?
Yeah.
So my number 2 is probably another quite niche one for you. I saw this originally as a kid on a VHS combination tape. It had episodes edited together as mini movies from 3 series. One I believe was Transformers. The other one I believe might have been G.I. Joe. I'd have to look it up. It will probably be the cover image of this episode, so it'll be there. And then the other was a show which is called Inhumanoids. Ever heard of this one?
No.
Yes. This was produced by Sombo and Marvel, again. It's a kind of science fiction animated kaiju show. It was originally part of the Super Sunday series of shorts, which was where they did 3 or 4 different franchises were given 15-minute episodes and then jumbled together into an hour-long special as a sort of test run to see what would stick. I know it was placed alongside Gem, which I never watched, and Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines, which I do remember watching. I remember the theme tune. Do you remember that one?
I've got memories of it.
And the Muscle Machines. Anyway, I said we wouldn't do any singing on this episode. I've already broken that rule.
Yeah, you banned me for that.
No, I said you could do it. I said I wasn't going to do it. Oh, kids' cartoons, though. God's sake. You just can't escape the awesome theme tunes. Anyway, so Inhumanoids was a success in this Super Sunday series, and it would go on and spawn a 13-episode series in 1986. So the show, which had a toy line to advertise, was based around gigantic monster play sets. They were 2 feet tall or something like that you could buy. I remember seeing them in their boxes in shops, and they were too expensive. And in the cartoon, they were huge monsters as well. And then there was obviously a team who would fight them, a team of humans that band together. Then they used mech suits and vehicles, and they were known as Earth Corps. And they would befriend some other like benevolent creatures. I seem to remember some of them being like rock creatures. Some of them were like treants, let's say, from Lord of the Rings. And they would all team up to fight these three gigantic kaiju monsters, Metlar, Tendril, and probably the most notorious character in this show, the character called Decompose. Decompose is a character, believe me. So this was the stuff of nightmares. This cartoon got complaints, again, from parents. Decompose was like a giant zombie thing with like a rib cage. It would open. You could see the rib cage. It would open its rib cage and grab characters, heroes, and place the heroes inside its rib cage as like a prison, which is quite disturbing in itself. The toy did this as well. It was voiced by Chris Latta, Starscream, so he would often do the typical Starscream voice. Let's say, I remember he would say his name, he would go "Decompose" and all this kind of stuff, and scream really loudly. But his actual special ability was that he could turn people, humans, into zombies. And in the course of the pilot show TV film, there is a female character who joins Earth Corps, and she is captured by Decompose, and Decompose turns her into a zombie. And it's actually like horrific. It's actually really disturbing. And this character is turned into this monstrous zombie that turns on the other human characters. And there's an entire story arc within this movie that's based around them rescuing her and turning her back into a human. And it's really good. It's actually really, really good and harrowing. It is quite a fresh, interesting take on the Saturday morning cartoon as well. Because it features an ongoing story, which was a rare thing. And the art itself was really interesting. Lots of shadows, lots of contrast. And it also uses like split screen. Like, you know how 24 would use it later on?
Yeah.
This cartoon was doing it in 1986.
That's an impressive idea.
It's actually really cool. Really, really cool. It's well worth checking out. I mean, there's only 13 episodes. Getting to the good stuff, I mean, you know, it's down to your patience. I would say, like, if any of these cartoons, if you're interested in them, just watch, like, Secret Galaxy with Dan Larson on YouTube, and that's the best way to get, like, the cliff notes, isn't it?
Yeah.
That guy's great.
He really is.
He is great. So, anyway, my number 2 in humanoids. So, Mark, what was your number 2?
My number 2 was Mask.
Okay, Mask.
Yeah. That was a show released in 1985, 2 seasons, 75 episodes.
Really? That much, was it?
Yeah, it was long, man.
Wow.
And yeah, produced by DIC and ICC TV Productions. It was another show that has that trend of transformation, but in a different sense. This was a show in which I wanted every toy. Every single toy was cool to me. The idea of these vehicles that have alternative modes.
Yes.
I mean, was it Matt Stryker? Was it? I believe it was. Matt Stryker. Yeah. Oh yeah, he was. His car that with the gull wing doors opened up and it could fly. I always thought that was one of the coolest things. I once had a friend of mine at school who brought his car in, and I was just jealous for the entire day just watching him play with it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, knowing you and knowing the future, you will discuss the toys, as will I.
Yes.
In the next segment. I'm pretty sure we will go into them.
And this is a show that it was all about a group of individuals, all of whom that they all have secret identities in this organization. They'd have these day jobs, and it was a case of they'd get together, they'd have their vehicles, and they would fight against Miles Mayhem and his team. And
this is where I start to get off Mask, right? I'm pretty sure I'll mention this in the future as well. But like, I love the toys. I think the cartoon is rubbish. Actually, I rewatched it again the other day, and it brought it all back. Like, the voice acting is terrible.
Oh yeah,
it is really bad. And Miles Mayhem, some like portly, bearded, villainous man, was just I don't know.
Thing is, each episode had this one point in it, and it was right about the same point every episode, which kept me coming back.
Which was?
And that was the point when Matt would turn around and go, "Computer, assemble me a team."
Oh yeah.
And he'd press the button, and then you get the cool green good luck. And then you get a list of all the heroes that are going to be in that episode.
Yeah.
And it was a toss-up between your favourites or if it was going to be someone new you hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And it was one of those shows. I was talking earlier on about the fact that the villains in these shows do end up sliding down the scale of threat.
Yes.
And Miles Mayhem at the start, it does give the impression of all intents and purposes being a warlord with an independent army, that he's actually threatening the planet in some capacity. However, like I then skipped forward a couple to the second season. Like there were 1 2 episodes
they completely change it, don't they?
But at that point, he's a comedy character.
Yeah, I read online actually that most people say do not watch the second season because it is ruined.
Well, they actually abandoned all concept of them fighting crime and turned it into more of a case of a racing show.
Yes.
Where you get the two respective organisations in races, and their vehicles would transform, they'd fight, and then usually the good guys would win. As I say, it is a show that did peter out significantly later on. But those vehicle designs were so awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a reason why you still get Mask comics, and there's still people crying out for like some of the toys to go through remasters and everything in present day times. I think there was one recently where Matt Tracker was released alongside G.I. Joe.
Yes.
Because it's just also surprising to me that considering all the other sort of reboots, they've never touched Mask in terms of the live action stuff. I mean, you got your G.I. Joe, you got your Transformers, but
I don't think Mask was that big. I'm gonna be honest, mate. I just don't think it was. I know that, like, I think IDW put Mask into the comic universe with Transformers, maybe. But I think, like, you know, Hasbro has done Transformers and G.I. Joe, but then what's the next one down, you know? There have been attempts already at Thundercats. As I say, Turtles has never left us, ever. It's always been, they've constantly, like, chopped and changed it. Ghostbusters, you know, was obviously asleep for a long time, but came back with the new films. But, I mean, I would probably say that they were, like, the big ones, you know?
I just think Mask is one that could be easily slotted into those universes.
Yeah.
Or it could have its own standalone. I don't know. I mean, with current effects and what they can do these days, they can make it look very cool.
It would look cool, yeah. In terms of the vehicles, yeah, definitely would. I'd love to see a live action of this. Okay, cool. So, well, this is interesting. We're both at our number one, and
there's been no crossover.
No crossover whatsoever. Wow. I'm pretty sure there's going to be no crossover here as well, knowing you. So,
knowing you, I know pretty much certain exactly what you've gone for.
So yeah, I guess my turn to go now. So you get to go last. So yeah, my number one is obviously the Transformers. When Hasbro bought the rights to release the Japanese toy lines Microchange and Diaclone in the West, they combined the two fictions into one and renamed it the Transformers. Hasbro hired Marvel to create the backstory. Then, by editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, Dennis O'Neil, I stress the Dennis O'Neil, was at first given the task of creating the characters, but was eventually replaced by Bob Budiansky, who would go on to write the majority of the characters' backstories. Apparently, though, Dennis O'Neil is responsible for the name of Optimus Prime. The TV show began in September 1984, produced by Marvel Productions and Sombo Entertainment, as always, and would affectionately become known as Generation 1. Classic characters aside, dude, for me personally, Transformers was a cut above the rest because of the voice acting.
Yeah.
You can't top it. You just can't.
Optimus Prime alone, that voice is so iconic.
Exactly. It survives to this day. You know, Peter Cullen is still voicing that character. I mean, yes, he does go on about killing people constantly in the live action movies. Kind of weird. That's not Optimus Prime from like the 80s.
We will destroy them.
Yeah. What does he say in Revenge of the Fallen? Give me your face, or something like that. It's
sounds like something a movie villain would shout.
I know, right? I mean, I can't remember which one of us coined it, but in reference to what's the YouTuber does the comic books?
Linkara?
In tribute to Linkara, someone I know, either me or you or Alan, if you're listening, they christened Optimus Prime in the Michael Bay movies as Crazy Prime. And frankly, it's perfect, really, isn't it? He is Crazy Prime because he is murderous and crazy, But anyway, enough of that. Some of the other cartoons were more consistent with their storytelling. Some other cartoons had smaller cast of characters that were better defined. But in terms of, visuals and voice acting and just being able to understand these characters within seconds of them appearing and talking, like Transformers just absolutely smashed all the other cartoons. Megatron, Soundwave, Starscream, Prime, Jazz, Scatman Crows. Oh my God, God tier character, God tier. Bumblebee, obviously. The list goes on from G1. It just, I'm even partial to the 1986 movie characters. I love the dynamic between Hot Rod and Carp. Springer's a bit boring, but RC was cool. Ultra Magnus, I always have done, despite what people might think. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. But going on what I said earlier on about having episodes of good stories, Transformers actually had its fair share of blinders. The key to Vector Sigma, which leads to the creation of my favorite combiner teams, the Stunticons and the Aerialbots, does a lot for the lore of the world of Transformers. Obviously, Transformers starts with, it's medias res, isn't it? The war between Autobots, Decepticons going on, they live, Cybertron on the land, and blah, 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 blah. But later episodes did develop the lore behind, what Cybertron is, who Vector Sigma is, how it gives life. Then there's War Dawn, which, adds more color and more depth to the Cybertron history. We get an origin story to Optimus Prime. Now, to be completely truthful, all of this lore that's come out of these cartoons has been improved by other writers since. No one ever goes back and goes, when I think of Optimus Prime before the war, I think of Orion Pax, because Orion Pax was a nerd and really lame, and like the origin of the Transformers, especially in the cartoon series here, is incredibly wavy, and it's, there was never like a writers team that set everything in stone with a Bible or anything. They just sort of made it up as they went along. But for me, my personal favorite Transformers episode, sort of a three-parter, is Dark Awakening. Have you heard of this one, Mark?
No.
It's the one set after the 1986 movie, after Prime is killed by Megatron, and spoilers, and he comes back as a zombie. And there's
actually no, that does ring a bell. Yeah,
it's really dark, and like there's like this battle between Prime and Rodimus Prime, and obviously Rodimus Prime is a bit annoying for various reasons, but there's this really cool struggle between the two characters because Rodimus Prime's like, "Oh, Prime, you're back," because he's had doubts. He gives him the Matrix back. "Oh, you're back, thank God." And Prime's like, "I'll take it." "Oh, don't give it to me. Don't get it. No, I'll take it." No. And he's sort of fighting with himself over it. And then he's like, "No, I'm the leader." And he basically tries to, without them realizing, because they're all stupid cartoon characters, kill them all, because he's under control and being brought back to life as a zombie, blah, 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 blah. But there's this great struggle between Prime and Hot Rod later on, where Hot Rod, without the, Matrix of leadership boost, ends up having to fight Optimus Prime with the Matrix, and it's really cool. And then the final sequence where Prime sacrifices himself again is like actually quite harrowing, because you see him die again. But it leads to the two parts of the Return of Optimus Prime as well, which is also a really good episode. Let's say a feature length episode. So yeah, Transformers Generation 1, Yeah, easily my favourite kids' cartoon. What more can I say? You knew it was coming. Probably
yeah,
quite disappointing, I imagine, but here it is. So, what's your number one?
My number one is the Turtles.
Aha, yes,
and
sir.
This is the one. This is the late edition for me.
So, when I was looking this up, right, I'd always thought Turtles was a 90s cartoon, but technically speaking, it's a 1989 release. But I was wondering whether or not we got it later. I don't know, but it's not, as you already know, in my top 5.
Well, it was released in the 80s. I got into the Turtles in the 90s.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think I did as well, but I did include it in my honourable mentions.
Yeah.
For this, because I'm counting it as a 1989 kids cartoon.
So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What can I really add to every other description that's ever been done of that? The story of 4 genetically mutated turtles. It was created by Eastman and Laird, and the original comic was a lot more of a dark noir story with the characters stalking in the shadows. They all had the same bandanas, and it was a much more of a violent story. And then it went through a little bit of a reshift to make it a bit more palatable to children, and it was released as a cartoon. And I cannot tell you if I saw the cartoon first or the movie. It's totally blank in my mind. I think I saw the cartoon first, but the movie was not long after. And at that time in my life, I was living in the Middle East, and we were still getting a massive influx of these toys. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
Because I lived in the country of Dubai, and despite the fact you would have thought this would be somewhat cut off from the majority of Western cultures, and it was to a degree, we only had one English-speaking channel. Turtles was everywhere, even there. There were racks upon racks of toys. There were all the set pieces, the play sets and everything, whether it be the sewers, whether it be the van, whether it be the blimp. And I totally went for this. It's a show that, at the time, the cartoon itself is somewhat weak in places, but it had a wealth of cast of characters that really did extend. It was constantly new ideas, new concepts, and the characters that were in it, they really stayed close to my heart. It's one of those shows that, ever since I watched that original cartoon, this show has been rebooted so many times. It has been reborn over and over again in one fashion or another. And more often than not, I will seek out these new versions and check them out just to see.
Give it a chance, yeah.
Yeah, and I have been pleasantly surprised on more than one occasion.
Yeah, I actually recently checked out the early 2000s with the slightly edgier artwork variation. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
The CGI one?
No. It's cell animation, but it's early 2000s, and it's like, as I said, the artwork style is slightly edgier. Let's put it that way. It's good.
I remember that one. Yeah,
it's actually pretty good.
And I also watched the Nickelodeon one.
Yes, I did see that.
That was a lot more CGI based, and
sillier, wasn't it? For kids, more for kids, wasn't it?
They understood the dynamic of the 4 brothers, and that was cool as well. It's a show that I've been watching for a very long time in one fashion or another. Even as far more recently with Michael Bay, and whether you love or hate those movies, it was interesting to see them back on the big screen again.
No doubt we'll discuss those movies in depth in the future.
Yeah. Still don't think Johnny Knoxville should have played Leonardo, though.
No, well, they recast him, didn't they?
Yeah. But, yeah, this is a show that's... I mean, the archetypes are very basic initially, anyway. But the characters evolved, and Turtles was one of those things that the world went crazy for it for about a couple of years. And I went crazy along with the world for it. So, my number one is Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And not Hero Turtles. It always sounded fucking strange to me.
I remember being a kid and hearing that they changed the name. And how, in America, it was called Ninja Turtles. And it was like a weird, British standards thing. And maybe jealous because ninja sounds much cooler. Yeah,
of all the aspects of that show, the fact they called themselves ninjas, yeah, that's going to incite me to violence.
So, Me and the Turtles cartoon is a weird one, dude. Because, yes, I loved the cartoon when I was a kid. Yes, we had the figures. But as I've gotten older, it's sort of fallen from grace for me. I am more of a fan of the film. I think the film is genuinely a great movie, and for a long time was possibly the best comic book movie that had been made, probably until the first X-Men. So the film at its heart is closer in tone to the comics.
And it's got a lot more emotion in it.
That's why I'm saying the comics are adult, to a degree, But yes, they added emotion to it, they added depth to it, and whatnot. I could go on for ages about how well written that film is. Not now. We're going to talk. We are going to analyze this movie one day. It's going to happen. I'm not now. Just it's the cartoon. But because of that, like I'm kind of like quite distant with the cartoon. I rewatched the pilot recently, and it's fine. It's fine. It's quite watchable. I remember having a VHS, which was like an edited clip show of the Turtles, blue cover with a picture of them standing together on the front, and it was called How It All Began. And it was like an edited clip show special of like the pilot, which was like 5-episode movie, like they always did. And I watched it quite a bit. I've got the sticker albums as well. But when I watched the film, I always found a certain amount of disappointment in the cartoon because it didn't have the fight sequences. It didn't have the same level of characterization. Fredo was not a threat. In the cartoon compared to the kind of threat he is in the movie. But I had a feeling you'd pick it, and if anyone was to ever pick it, I would never knock him for it. So that's it then, dude?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. 2 completely different lists. I did wonder. I actually thought there'd be a little bit of crossover. So can you give me some honorable mentions?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, you got like the real Ghostbusters.
So yeah, Ghostbusters is a weird one for me.
Was that 80s?
It was 80s. It was 80s. Yeah, I really need to like try and rewatch this because I can't remember enough of it. I remember certain episodes being quite good. My biggest problem with Ghostbusters cartoon is a very similar problem I have with the Turtles. Is that I love the live action movie. I always loved the live action movie. I saw the live action movie as a kid, and just I don't know. The cartoon sort of just faded away for me, So, but it was in my honorable mentions. Any others?
What else? Jason the Wheeled Warriors was always a classic one.
Yes,
it's visually very different to a lot of the other shows.
Very anime. Great setup as well. Great intro theme. So yeah, I did like it. Not enough though. Not enough to go in my top 5. Unfortunately,
it was one of those ones I was aware of, and the intro music was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
but no, you're right. It didn't sort of like leave that much of an impression compared to these.
It was quite dark. I liked the monster mines are quite scary. So, what about Galaxy Rangers?
That was going to be one of the ones I was going to mention shortly. Yeah. Galaxy Rangers is another one. Awesome intro music.
I've rewatched it, right, and I was kind of up and down it because initially the main character is it Zachary Fox. I never gave 2 hoots about him. He has like a story arc to do with his wife being kidnapped and whatever, but he was never that interesting. He was a bit daddy-ish to me personally as a kid. In the same way that the Auric was daddy-ish in Visionaries. I always thought Goose was cool though, like the Clint Eastwood style character.
Oh, with the gun spitting.
Yeah, he was cool. But the world is the most interesting thing about that cartoon. But I'll tell you, I've rewatched it recently, and it's actually been growing on me. And I kind of feel like I need to keep watching it because it's actually quite good. So yeah, any others?
Do you remember one from back in the day called Ulysses 31?
Yeah. I do remember Ulysses 31. Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, it's just a remake of the Odyssey.
Of course, another great theme.
Yeah, and I did actually have the benefit of about a decade or 2 ago. I managed to watch the ending to it as well. I never realised that it was a show
complete story.
Yeah, which is a bit unusual sometimes with a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
The whole point of these shows is to keep them going until eventually you get cancellation. But this was a show that was created purely with the intent of having a beginning, middle, and end. So,
yeah, another mention for me is another one that I've not been able to watch, unfortunately, because there's only so much time in the world. Is the Beetlejuice cartoon. Was a massive fan of this when I was a kid. Loved the film and the fact that we got more in cartoon form. Oh, fantastic!
Which cartoon?
The Beetlejuice cartoon.
Oh yes, yeah. Was that 80s?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I looked up. Any others?
Yeah. So I was just thinking about Beetlejuice. I had the best intro as well.
It is a good intro, yeah.
Really creepy imagery in that as well.
Yeah, it's great art style. It sort of replicated the Tim Burton aesthetic quite effectively.
Yeah. At this point, I'd be just listing loads of 80s cartoons that I've watched more than ones that really made that much of an impression on me. I think those ones that are really the main ones for me.
There's probably two more I could mention. One briefly, Dino Riders, because I always loved the concept. Was
that the one where they had the robotics clicking onto the back of the robots and they rode on the sides and things like that?
On the dinosaurs, yes.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, that was cool. And then finally, this was the one that was jostling with Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, you just reminded me of one other one, actually, when I talked about things clicking onto things.
Go on.
Centurions.
Yes. I liked, though I never had the Centurions toys, so they were a bit of a mystery to me, but I liked the characters in the cartoon.
I always thought that was so cool. The whole teleporting machinery come down to it, clicks onto them in a certain way. And
the toy concept was really cool, yeah.
Yeah, never had any of the toys, wanted all of them.
A similar concept, actually, to that is a cartoon and toy line called Robotics. Did you ever hear this?
No.
So there was only ever a film, and it's based on the Milton Bradley toy line, and it's kind of like Meccano, but you could build robots with controls and battery powers. And they turned it into a cartoon, kind of a similar concept to Transformers. Humans are at war with each other. They land on this planet, and they end up reverse of Transformers, you could say. They end up bonding with these robots that are also at war on this planet. And I really like the tragic background, and I just really love the characters. This is another rare example of Peter Cullen playing a villain as well. So those are my honourable mentions. Any other honourable mentions for you, Mark? That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, cool.
I know in a week's time I'll probably go, oh my God, I forgot that one, or something to that tune. It's these every now and again, and I'll just be watching a show or doing something, and suddenly a memory will come back of watching a cartoon as a child. I haven't thought about that in 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
It's strange how some of these can live in the back of your head.
That's because you watch them so much, and I think you kind of absorb them subconsciously.
Yeah.
So let's recap, man. Give me your top 5.
Okay, so that was He-Man at number 5, Visionaries at number 4, Thundercats at number 3, Mask at number 2, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at number 1.
Very good. For me, number 5 was Dungeons and Dragons. Number 4 was Marshall Brinstar. Number 3 were the Mighty Autobots. Number 2, Inhumanoids. And number 1, the Transformers. Oh, I enjoyed doing this. It was just an excuse to watch loads of kids' cartoons, to be fair, but I enjoyed this. It was fun. What about you, mate?
Well, YouTube did help a lot in terms of my research.
Absolutely.
And as you said, prior to shout out to Secret Galaxy, that in itself, watching that channel was a lot of fun because it just brought back a load of different memories of other shows as well.
Yes.
We're scrolling through the feed and go, oh my God, I've forgotten about that one. And then you're getting a 10-minute data burst of all the stuff.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. A very funny guy as well. Great presenter. Great energy. I was a big fan of that guy. A lot of YouTubers don't have the charisma that he has, and he writes it all himself, doesn't he? So, much respect to him. All right. So, yes, in the future, Mark, I imagine we will probably be picking and deep diving one of these per season, maybe. We'll see, or 2. We'll see what happens. It depends whether or not there's enough material for a discussion. I don't know. For Transformers, I definitely reckon I could talk an hour. We'll see what happens in the future. So, I reckon that's a pretty good place to leave it. We've been talking for long enough. After the break, me and Mark will be back where we'll be having a free-flow conversation about Christmas and presents. Because, we're boys at heart. That's all that matters to us as kids. So, be right back. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. So, this next and final section of the episode, me and Mark are going to have a little bit of a reminiscence, let's say. I really wanted to go about this in a very loose, natural way. Me and Mark have been friends, as mentioned before, 25 years or something like that. You know, a lot of our time is spent chatting, chewing the fat, shooting the breeze, as they say. And I didn't want to do something quite so structured, let's say. I've got a few pointers that I want to make sure I'm covering, but I also wanted to invite Mark maybe to crack open a can of something. Have you got a can of something there, Mark?
Oh, I've got myself a bottle of vintage cider.
Ooh, vintage, eh? Me personally, I do like a Guinness. So a couple of cans on the go. And yes, so what inspired this section, and I'm sure Mark can agree, is that I imagine this is quite possibly the case if you're listening to this podcast, that there is, even though we're old, still an inner child within us. You know, would you agree with that, Mark?
Oh, 100%. It's not too inner these days either. So.
No, that's for true. That's very true. You know, I still read comics. I still read manga. I still
play computer games.
I don't watch so many comic movies because I kind of grew tired of how they all ended up the same. Just look anywhere online in 2023 and you'll see that there are arguments about it. I don't care about that. But one thing I would always say is that my love for creativity and writing certainly stems from my childhood, from my upbringing, from, you know, the action figures, toys of the 80s and them being promoted by kids' cartoons. It's kind of predatory, isn't it? Let's be honest. You know,
they knew exactly what they were doing.
They had to. If I remember correctly, they were like working around the advertising standards or something like that. I can't remember. I likely will have mentioned it already by this point when we talk about the cartoons in the previous segment. But what I always appreciated was that some of these cartoons had lots of depth and lore, and that's what kind of got me excited about them. That's what made you want to buy them. Mm-hmm. And you know, playing with action figures, let's say, you know, as a kid, it did. Not just action figures. I'm not just going to be talking about action figures here, to be honest with you. That's a spoiler. You know, it always indulged my imagination. You know, always. Any toys, any computer games as a kid, it always like played and activated my imagination. So, you know, as a kid, I used to daydream, as yourself mentioned in the previous episode as well. You know, stories involving the Turtles and the Transformers. I may have mentioned that in the previous episode. You know, it's all linked. It's all linked. You know, create my own fan canon, fan fiction in my head as an 8-year-old. Weird. And you know, I have these the cartoons that were mentioned in the previous episode, and a lot of these Christmas presents we're going to talk about now to thank for it. You know, and you know, when we were young, we didn't have our own disposable income, obviously. So we had to wait for birthdays and Christmas and the generosity of our parents to get us these figures that we were seeing advertised all the time in cartoons and in advertisements in the breaks and whatever. So it was always exciting, you know, to write your Christmas list, what you wanted, and you know, wake up the next day and there it is, all there in the front room. You know, oh, that excitement! Oh my God, crazy to think about it. My dad used to get quite excited about it as well. Sad bastard.
That started mine.
Your dad as well? Was he the same? See, the inner child, man. The inner child. Oh,
I mean, both of them are. I still remember, sort of like my dad, when I was older, having a go at me over the fact that he bought me a Transformer and he didn't realise he had to affix all the stickers. And he said, there I was, son, 2:00 in the morning, trying to put all those bloody stickers on that figure. And I thanked him for it. I appreciated his efforts.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's already funny.
Yeah.
Because my old man used to do the same thing. he used to, for years and years and years afterwards, up until the last few years before he passed away, he would bring it up. Be like, you bastard, you made me put... But really, what he meant was he loved it. He just wanted an excuse to open the packaging himself and get the figures out and put the stickers on. I've got photos of him doing it as well in storage, of him doing the stickers, you know. It was... this is what I don't think it was for Christmas. I think it was for a birthday, so it won't be in my list. But Metroplex, which is one of the city Transformers.
That was one of the large ones, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He always brought it up. There was so many stickers on it. He used to use it against me forever. So, so yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I guess I'm inviting anyone who's listening now to sit back because it's nearly Christmas and crack yourself open a beer. If you're a lady, you're probably going to find this less interesting because it's all going to be boys' toys. But maybe you two can sit down and crack open a drink and just, reminisce about being a kid. So, what's the first item on your list, Mark?
Well, when it comes to Christmas presents, I mean, I know that we were talking about toys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was actually something that I used to get every Christmas. And once we actually started considering this list, I realized that I'd done a bit of a disservice in a previous episode, wherein I talked about the fact that I got into comic books through my local library.
Yes.
And through the likes of Zero Hour and reading DC and Marvel.
Yes.
But I totally drew a blank because I forgot there was something before then.
Oh, right, okay.
There was something that a lot of people our age was actually into.
Yes.
And that would be the Beano and Dandy.
Man. All right. Okay.
And that was the thing. Every Christmas, I would always get either a Beano or a Dandy hand.
Yes. Oh, wait. Just hold your horses for 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I just had to go and get something I'm going to talk about in a second. Carry on, please. I'm not editing that out because it's like, I wasn't ready for that. Go on, keep going.
Well, but nonetheless, it's Beano, I always skewed a little more towards the Beano than the Dandy.
Yes.
I mean, the Beano had the more memorable characters. I mean, like Dandy, you had the likes of Desperate Dan, which, if you actually start describing him as a character, you realise what in the actual fuck were they given us in terms of like the ratings. I mean, he is a Texas cowboy who's known as the strongest man in the world, who uses a blowtorch to shave, who eats cow pies. He's literally an English Texan Popeye. And yeah, it's there were a lot of very weird stories in these comics. You'd often get a singular page panel wherein you get a story of some character going through hijinks.
Yep.
But Beano was the one I kind of gravitated towards more because it had the more memorable characters. You had Dennis the Menace, Minnie the Minx, the Bash Street Kids.
Oh, Minnie the Minx, yeah.
And this was the spiritual home of Banana Man.
Yes.
Now,
I thought it was Dandy.
No, I believe Banana Man was Beano.
Oh, I can tell you now, mate.
My apologies.
You're wrong.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you why. Because talking about these books, it will be the next thing on my list, to be honest with you. So it's a bit of a spoiler, I suppose. I recently went on eBay and had a bit of a buying binge and tried to buy some old books. And one of them was the Dandy book from 1993, which I am now holding in my hand. And I can tell you there are characters such as Cuddles and Dimples.
Oh, God, I do remember that.
There was...
Was it the numbskulls, the characters that lived in someone's head?
Well, there was Strange Hill School.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spotted Dick.
Jesus.
Some kid with spots.
How the fuck did half of this get past the radar?
Billy Green and his sister Jean. Oh, I don't know. It looks boring as hell. Dopey Dina, Corporal Klotz, Banana Man, and yes.
Unbelievable. I mean,
do your research, mate.
I'd like to apologise to the creators of Banana Man for any
maybe he appeared in both. Maybe he appeared in both. I don't know.
I did read I glanced at some of the Wikipedias on this, and some actual strips moved back and forth between Beano and Dandy.
There we go. Maybe it was by the same people. I don't know. Who knows?
Both of them started. One started in 1937, and one started in 1938, and they both come out of Scotland. Like, it's very strange that these two Scottish kids comics had such an impact on my childhood 60 years later. But you could talk about your Avengers Endgame and stuff like that. But in those annuals, when you started to get the crossovers of Dennis the Menace and the Bash Street Kids, that was my Endgame.
Ironically, I never got a single Dandy or a single Beano.
Oh man, you didn't get the refreshers that used to get stuck on the front of them.
No, not until I was 10 years old. It was after my parents divorced, and my stepdad's grandparents grandparents. My stepdad's parents bought me one, and I'd never had one before. I think my dad thought the Bean Allen Daniel was lame because he used to read Marvel comics and DC comics, so I used to get graphic novels.
Yeah, that's a step up.
Well, not graphic novels per se. I used to get the step down from graphic novels, which was the yearly annual. Do you remember these?
Yeah.
A Transformers annual, Defenders of the Earth annual, whatever goddamn Christmas like franchise, toy, whatever you want to say, there would be an annual, a hardback annual, which had like a mixture of like puzzles, quizzes. It would have comics from like the main series, whatever. The Transformers annuals specifically. I had Transformers, Galaxy Rangers, Defenders of the Earth. I remember them very well. Transformers definitely had loads of them, and they had like mixtures of comics from the English Marvel line and like various bits and pieces as well. I bought a few of them recently, ironically, and they also had like weird prose fiction short stories in them as well. That's weird. I read them and I was like, these don't feel like they're written for kids. Like the language, I don't know. Times have changed though. But yeah, annuals, mate. Remember them?
Yeah, man.
There's one annual that I'm desperate to get hold of that I can't find in the UK for a decent price, and that is this Amazing Spider-Man annual. It had a green cover, and most of the story inside was to do with the Hobgoblin and the origins of the Hobgoblin. I want it so badly. Yeah, I found it on eBay imported, and it's like 40 quid or something like that, and I can't bring myself to spend £40 on, you know,
a lot of these annuals, even like 20-30 years ago, they are selling for quite big money already.
Well, I bought 4 Transformers annuals for 20 quid, and the Dandy cost me £3. Nice. There's a Beetlejuice animated cartoon annual that I really want, which I've seen for £6, but I wasn't quick enough to get it. But that sort of fluctuates. However, there is a Transformers annual that I had seen for like £70 because it's quite rare apparently. Very strange. What's your next item, mate?
Okay, well, next one's getting more into like I didn't get many board games as a child.
Okay.
But I did get a couple that left an impression on me, and one that I got for Christmas. This was around about 1992, I believe I got it.
Yeah.
So I'm a 10-year-old, and I know that my parents were a bit nervous about buying me this board game, but I was going crazy about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Atmosphere.
Oh, I don't think I ever had it. I always wanted it. Oh, you're so lucky.
And this was a game. We got it on Christmas Day.
The video board game.
Yes.
You're so lucky.
Yeah, it was. Atmosphere was a game where you had a videotape, which you used to put into the player. You'd roll the dice, you'd move around the board, and as you were playing, there was a character called the Gatekeeper.
Yes.
Who would regularly appear.
You can watch clips from this on YouTube now,
yeah,
by the way. It's pretty funny.
At this point, it's campy as all hell.
Yeah. It looks so scary in the trailers, though. I was
we turned the lights off. Like, my entire family came around, cousins, uncles, and everything.
Were you playing it with the family?
Yeah.
Wow.
And just to say, my uncle turned around to me about halfway through the game. Bear in mind that one game is 1 hour long, and you have an hour in which to win the game. Otherwise, everyone loses.
Yes.
And my uncle turns to me halfway through the game and goes, Mark, I read something about this in a paper. I know a way to like cheat the game. And I was like, oh, really? And he goes, yeah, you do this. And he pressed pause on the video remote. And little like 11-year-old me lost my fucking mind. I was like,
cheeky.
But that led to a whole world. I never played any of the others, but there was a significant number of follow-ups to this. And I actually, in reading about this, I did some research. I discovered that Atmosphere actually earned itself a re-release on DVD.
Yes.
And what they did on the DVD is they gave it a randomizer aspect, which was they weren't able to do so with VHS. That meant that every time you played it, it'd play differently.
Yes.
The character, the Gatekeeper would jump up at different times, and each game would be interesting. There's even an app for it now, and apparently there's a Kickstarter to relaunch it again because it's something that does live a little bit on the fringe of cultural memory.
Yes.
So, I did enjoy that game. Fortunately, I got to see, if you remember from back in the day, the Spoonie one.
Yes. Good old Spoonie, yes.
Yeah, he did a review of Atmosphere, and he constantly referenced it in later reviews of "I banish you to the black hole."
Yes.
And all of that. That was just, yeah.
Good old James Rolfe covered it in his Board James series as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
That was a Board James. It's so funny. It's so funny.
Well,
not again. Speaking of board games, then I mean, yeah, we did have a lot of board games, but I suppose the one I remember the most getting was Hero Quest. Actually,
that was a gateway drug to D&D, wasn't it?
To Warhammer,
Yes.
yes. We used to play it with my father. Me and my brother and my father used to play it all the time. We played this before he got Warhammer. So yeah, this was a great one. Yeah, it was like an ongoing RPG. We never completed it ever because you had your character sheets like D&D, and you went around the board and you had to remember everything, carry everything over week to week, session to session, and whatever. It's good though. They re-released it just recently, and because it's not anything to do with Games Workshop anymore, because the original was by Games Workshop and MB maybe, can't remember who it was.
I believe MB, yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't use the same art, which is a shame because the new art is rubbish.
Oh, that box was a distinctive look of the guy swinging the sword on the front of the.
It looked like I don't know if you've ever heard of the artist, but it's Frank Frazetta. It looked like Frank Frazetta, who's very famous for his realistic paintings of fantasy characters and barbarians and half-nude women. Yes, an iconic image. Even more iconic than that was the gargoyle figure model that you used. I remember because if you remember, you had 4 to 5 players. You pick a character each, and then one of the players would be the villain, and you'd have a board, and the villain would place the traps and the monsters on the board as you explored everywhere and stuff. It was so cool.
Yeah, I've only ever played it twice in my life, and
it's good. It's simple compared to Warhammer, and it's simple compared to D&D. Yeah. So it sort of operates in between. So if you've played either or, you probably think it was light.
Yeah, it's a more streamlined system and everything.
Yeah, so. it's like a gateway board game. A gateway role playing game, I suppose. But yeah, lots of great memories playing that. Did actually have some. We bought the new version, as I said. Did have some friends over to play it a few months ago. And as is expected, we had the Basil Podderis Conan the Barbarian soundtrack playing in the background. Yep.
Yeah, that fits perfectly.
Great stuff. So, yeah.
Another board game that I had as a child that I got for Christmas. I mean, you probably had this one. I mean, this is one where the advert made it seem far more interesting than the actual game, but that was Mousetrap.
Yes. I never owned it. I played it because my... most Christmases as a kid, we would go to my auntie's house over the New Year's period because they had the biggest house in the family, so the rest of the family would go there, and they were board game fanatics, and they always used to ask to get the Mousetrap out, always. Yep. So yeah, it's great.
But one thing we always found with Mousetrap is that you'd start playing the game, and after about 20 minutes, you go, "Should we just put the entire thing together and just set it off over and over again?"
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the board game wasn't as interesting as actually watching the entire contraption play out. So, at least that from my personal perspective.
I didn't even realise there was a game. I just thought it was the trap for years until I saw it or played it with the kids or something, with Haley's kids or something, and then, yeah.
I mean, I imagine that there are probably more board games that I've had over the years, but those were 2 distinctive ones that kind of stick out in memory as being sort of core memories when it comes to board games.
Yes. Well, as I've mentioned previously, I have a brother. He's just 1 year younger than me, and fortunately, having him is good to share memories with and to ask him to remember. That's always, for an episode like this. And one thing that I actually remember talking to him today was My Pet Monster. Do you remember My Pet Monster?
Oh, with the orange handcuffs and the purple blue,
yes. I don't think boys ever got very cuddly toys unless it was this. It was a 3 foot tall monster with big eyes, a big plastic turquoise nose and fangs and tuft hair, orange fur and skin, and the big claws, and as was most famous, the handcuffs. And I remember us both getting one for Christmas one year, and it being I think everyone in my street had one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I remember the cartoon and everything that came along with it.
Cartoon was brief though, wasn't it? Not a lot of it. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, man, we used to use the My Pet Monster for wrestling moves.
Yeah.
That's what we used it for more than anything else. We used to suplex it and throw it around and beat it up and fight it rather than I don't know. What were you expected to do with it? Cuddle it? Oh,
Yeah,
no, we used to punch it. We used to beat the absolute crap out of it. They are actually very expensive if you look for them on eBay. And I wouldn't be surprised it's because they're all in terrible condition because of all the kids beating the crap out of it. What about your next one, man?
Oh, at this point we move into computer consoles.
Okay.
So, like, I received a number of consoles over the years. I mean, I do remember one of the previous podcasts I may have mentioned the fact that I was Sega, but I did start off with a NES.
Did you? I never owned a NES. Never.
I did, and I can't remember too much about it. I do remember two distinctive games that I owned because I was quite young at that point. I do know that I had Mario Brothers 3.
Yes. You've always mentioned how Mario Brothers 3 has been something of a pillar for you in video games.
Well, it was one of the very first games that I attempted and could not complete. I was not good enough. I mean, I was not. By no means was I a hardcore gamer when I was younger. I was very much. I dabbled, and I had that, and I also had Turtles, that bastard hard game.
Oh no!
And
no!
Yeah, you remember the underwater level with the seaweed? Yeah.
Oh no! Oh man. Yes.
Every time that's referenced in any review of some YouTuber, I fully feel that pain because I was there. I was there in the trenches when that first fucking happened, man. And that left a scar on me.
I never played it. Oh, sorry. I never owned it, but I knew someone who owned a NES, and I played it around there. I also remember going to like a house party and them having a NES and it being on in the background and like it just being permanently stuck on the first level because none of the kids could get off it. I'm actually going to be undertaking that challenge soon, by the way, because I don't know if you're aware, but Konami have suddenly realized that they have this incredibly massive backlog of video games and they can make money out of it. And so they've released like Castlevania collections, Contra collections, and they released a collection of their retro Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles games, including that one, which I bought. So it's got rewind functions, save states. So I'm actually going to undertake the challenge reasonably soon.
I feel that it might make that game somewhat easier.
We'll see.
Yeah. But with later years, I started to get other consoles.
Well, hold tight. Hold tight.
You want to keep on the NES for a second, do you?
I'm saying let's alternate because I've got like two consoles. That's two separate items. So are you done with the NES?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You got any action figures on your list?
Oh yeah, yep. I got those later.
All right. Wow. The NES was 1988. I looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
1988. So you were young.
I had it when I lived in Dubai.
What?
Yeah. This is something that I haven't mentioned before, but I spent several years of my life living in the Middle East.
Yes.
My father had work out there, and we moved out there. And one thing I'll say about Dubai is you can get pretty much anything in terms of entertainment. Well, during the late 80s, early 90s, you could get any form of entertainment in terms of videos and everything through less than legal means. I mean, I believe our local video rental shop was in actual fact all pirated videos. And it was just an open secret that no one talked about because we all wanted to watch like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters.
Of course.
And the NES I got, I'm reasonably certain it was a legit NES, but I'm not so sure about the cartridges I was playing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it.
Well, see, my first console was actually a Game Boy.
Never owned a Game Boy.
Yeah, it's 89, I want to say, 1990 maybe. I think it was 1990. It was after my parents had divorced and my dad moved out, but his office was still there. And in his office, he left his ZX Spectrum. And that's my first experience really of video games, was playing the Spectrum. And I can't remember for the life of me what made me want a Game Boy. It must have been watching Games Master or playing it around someone's house, because this is before, spoilers, I got a SNES. And I may have mentioned it. Actually, no, because we've not released the episode yet. I'm going to mention the Game Boy in an episode soon when I talk about Metroid and how it, randomly getting a Game Boy for Christmas with Metroid actually became really important to my gaming future, let's say. So there's not so much to say about the Game Boy yet. I'm going to save that for my future self when we record or have recorded when the listeners listen to that episode at some point. But Yes, the Game Boy was like, the first console I ever owned, and I got that for Christmas. I got a carry case of it and like the magnifier light as well, and a few games. So, what about any action figures, man? Tell me about some action figures that you got.
Fair enough. Well, I'll come back to the consoles later because I had a couple I did want to mention with regards to that.
Yeah, I've got a couple more, don't worry. I've got a couple more for them.
Okay, well, action figure wise, I mean, the main ones that kind of I initially insisted upon were He-Man.
Oh, okay.
So I was fortunate enough to get a He-Man and a Battle Cat.
Mm-hmm.
And within about 20 minutes of getting Battle Cat, I promptly lost the armor.
The Battle Cat had like this weird, like furry skin, didn't it?
And it used to get this red sort of like armor that used to click over the top of him.
Yes, because it went from Cringer to Battle Cat, didn't it?
Exactly. And he didn't have the same sort of like intimidation without his armor as much.
I'm pretty sure Cringer was a bit of a flake in the cartoon, wasn't he?
It was kind of played up a little bit, wasn't it? So... And I had one or two other characters. I mean, I have been for the life of me trying to remember because you had He-Man, you had She-Ra, and I might have had one of the She-Ra figures that might have actually...
She-Ra was a different line that came out later.
Yeah, but I may have ended up with one of those figures as well.
I had a few He-Man figures, but I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the biggest fan of He-Man. You know, between me and my brother, we definitely had He-Man and Skeletor. Mm-hmm. We didn't have Man at Arms. We had a few of the villains. So
you had the guy that used to have the head turning thing.
Yes.
He could rotate the top of his head, and he had 3 faces.
That's right. Yes, Mossman, who was sort of made of the same weird skin as the Battle Cat. My personal favorite, Stinkor, who was like a monster skunk anthropomorphic, and like you could like maybe rub him or something, and he would actually smell. Like all the different characters had like lots of different gimmicks, let's say.
Yeah.
So there was the one that was like a short guy in armor who would push down and he'd jump up. But one of my personal favorites, I can't remember his name. Oh, so I was expecting to talk about him, man. I'm quite surprised actually. You're talking about it. Was he was like a red monster that was made of like 20 parts, and you could configure him into multiple different ways: 2 heads, 1 head, 4 legs, 3 arms, and whatever you wanted. But I think we got that on the cheap. But I had a cut that they released a few characters from the film as well, like Blade with the swords, Car, who was like the weird armored one, and he had like this thing on his back he could flick, and it would make him spark, which probably was quite dangerous for kids, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. He-Man was a weird one. I think like because you're a year older than me, and He-Man was 1983 originally. Like I missed the Christmas boat for He-Man.
Yeah, I still remember like the He-Man where you could rotate a wheel on his back and it would change from He-Man to He-Man with battle damage, where he had a crack across the armor on the front of his chest and things like that.
Oh, that rings a bell, actually.
Yeah.
Didn't he come with an axe and a shield as well as the sword?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you actually break it down, He-Man it had very little depth to it in terms of, even by comparison to the other cartoons. It was,
by comparison, definitely, as I have mentioned in the previous segment already, there is I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil it for you, but I need to say because in the last episode, because it's in the previous segment, Filmation, who made He-Man, made a series after He-Man called Brinstar, and there's actually loads more depth in Brinstar than there is He-Man. Yeah, loads more.
I imagine we will get into that in the past.
Yes. Well, okay, then speaking of action figures, I should finally mention Transformers, because, you know, Transformers is my thing. I was the kid who was mad about Transformers in school. And in terms of Christmas, the biggest memory for me is, I want to say it was like 87, 88. It was after the movie was released, and I got Ultra Magnus, your favorite. But the Ultra Magnus toy was like, you know, phenomenal. Obviously, Transformers were originally released in Japan as a different line with different characters, and they were repurposed for the UK and American markets. Did you know this?
I knew something about this where you get palette swaps, wouldn't you?
No, basically, for example, Optimus Prime was not called Optimus Prime in Japan. He was called Convoy, right?
That does ring a bell, yeah.
Yes. So here's a little thing about Ultra Magnus. Do you know why Ultra Magnus had a white Optimus Prime inside him?
Why?
Because in Japan, in the original toy line, Ultra Magnus was not a character. The Optimus Prime figure that came with Ultra Magnus was actually Convoy, and the way the action figure worked is that you would snap the trailer and parts of the Ultra Magnus toy to each other and to Optimus Prime to create Ultra Magnus. In the Japanese original, it was like a suit of armor that Convoy wore.
Oh, I see.
Rather than being a character, yeah.
That's why he looks like Optimus, but with extra parts. So
yeah, it's like years later they sort of repurposed it into him being like Optimus Prime's brother under the armor. I think it was the IDW comics that did that, which I thought was always pretty cool. But yeah, we got Ultra Magnus. I've actually got a photo of this of me and my brother. We both got a hot rod each, which I think I mentioned.
I got one of those as well. Yeah.
Yep. This year, my brother also got, which means we both had. This is the year he got the Thundercats tank. Did you get Thundercats?
No, but
for Christmas.
I never got a Thundercats action figure.
Oh, really? Thundercats was one of your favourites, wasn't it?
It was, but to be honest, it wasn't the figures I wanted when it came to Thundercats.
Oh, right, okay.
What I wanted was the Gauntlet and the Sword of Omens.
Yes, I had the Sword of Omens, which had batteries.
I wanted it so goddamn.
Oh, I'm so sorry, man.
I mean, that cartoon made it look so fucking badass. So just holding up to your face and go, Thundercats. Thunder.
Oh, I'm
Thunder.
so sorry.
Oh, yes.
I'm so sorry, man. I got all of that in my
I can imagine, man.
me and my brother both had one. You had batteries.
What was it? Like, Sword of Omens give me sight beyond sight.
Sight beyond sight. That's right. And then you'd look through the hilt.
Yeah, and it let you see long distance. I mean, what the actual fuck? Talk about exposition move one.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a few of the toys as well. The toys came with these little battery packs that you would plug into their backs, and it would make their eyes glow.
Oh, because that's what happened when he used to wave the fucking sword.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I was taunting you now. So
this hurts, man.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not. My dad actually told me years later that when they bought me Ultra Magnus. If you look at the promotional materials at the time, Ultra Magnus was advertised as the new leader of the Autobots. Now, as we know, that doesn't happen per se, does it?
It almost happens, but he has a bit of trouble with that Matrix, doesn't he?
That goes wrong for him.
Get the fucker open.
Get the fucking Matrix open, exactly. And if you look at some of the promotional artwork, it shows like new Autobot leader versus new Decepticon leader Galvatron. Ooh. And and Dad told me they bought us this Ultra Magnus because they're expecting him to be like the new leader or something. And then when we finally watched the movie, it didn't happen because he couldn't open the Matrix.
I will be honest. I warmed up to Ultra Magnus over the years. I mean,
he got better in the comics.
Oh, in the IDW, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the comics. Yeah,
because I always used to see Ultra Magnus in the same sort of like spotlight that I would see, for want of a better term, spotlight. It's Transformers, but at the same spotlight as Cyclops.
Yeah.
From the X-Men, and I didn't like Cyclops. I was always firmly Wolverine, and it was only through actually reading his story through later comics I actually went to start to appreciate these characters more.
Yes, well, the lore for the cartoon and the toys was, I mean, it was what it was,
paper thin. So until they actually turned him into that more of a mercenary, wasn't it?
That's right. He's like some kind in the comics. He's like a bounty hunter, who just had an enforcer, isn't he? He's an enforcer.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like almost got like
for the quintessence.
I can't remember. No, he's an Autobot enforcer, and like things are going wrong on Earth, and he's sent to Earth to sort it out. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read the IW comics.
Yeah, me too.
So. Yeah. So you got any more figures on your list?
Oh well, I had a couple of random figures. I mean, I can't for the life of me understand why we did this, but there was a period of time when my father was working abroad, and because it was easier for him just to send money to us and say, "Oh, buy yourself something for Christmas," and we used to go down to Woolworths.
Oh, Woolworths! I was going to. Actually, you know what? I had a mental note to mention Woolworths because if there's any store in Southend that I miss, it's Keddy's or it's Woolworths.
Oh, those two combined, yeah.
Yeah,
we'll get to Keddy's in a second. We will come to Keddy's in a moment. Oh, absolutely.
Just like the way they used to do them up all Christmassy and stuff, and going into like Woolworths as a kid to look at the toys or whatever because of the pocket money you've got on or the Christmas money from your nan or your dad and your it was part of the Christmas part, wasn't it? The music being pumped through the
and you had the rows upon rows of blister pack action figures that you could just walk along and go,
it's heaven.
What do I want? I want them all. and me and my brother put together our Christmas money. And we bought a couple of action figures related to one franchise, so we could actually.
Okay.
Yes, and of all the possible franchises that we could have picked, we chose Hook. And I still don't understand why.
The film,
yes,
was and is like an amazing film, dude.
Oh yeah, we watched that non-stop over and over again. But the action figures was so sort of like by comparison to like the other action figures that we could have gone for, like all the different gimmicks and everything. When we decided we wanted these very not doing much action figures.
Yeah, it's because you loved the film though at the time. I mean, do you remember there were Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves action figures with Kevin Costner and Alan Rickman figures?
What the actual fuck? Yeah.
There were even those, but because I loved the film at the time, I wanted the action figures for a birthday. Maybe I can't remember. I don't think I ever had any Hook figures ever.
We ended up with Peter, Hook, Rufio, and do you remember that one Fudball?
I remember the Rufio figure actually.
He had like the bamboo armor across his chest and everything, and the red and black, all of that. And I mean, toys get battered pretty quickly when they're kind of like they're very sort of like very minimal articulation.
Sorry, I'm going straight on eBay to look at this. I have to go. Keep talking. I am listening.
I mean, I believe the Peter we had was the one in green that used to have some sort of backpack on his back with a hook on it that you could like string it, and he would zip line from one place to another. And like, not in the movies. No point in the movies does Peter Pan zip line.
For some reason, like Peter Pan's got a fucking bandana, mate. I remember the Peter Pan figure. Yeah, he's got a backpack with a grappling hook and the sword and a bandana. That is weird.
Yeah, they took some liberties with some of these, but nonetheless, me and brother, we compiled our money and we got our money's worth out of it. We used to play little set pieces because we did watch that movie until.
Oh, it's a great movie.
It really is.
So
that was my first exposure to Peter Pan after Disney, and it was a very good story. I mean, all of that.
But I imagine it might crop up in a future episode. We can analyze that film properly. I'd love to.
I mean, it's a
really beautiful film.
But
its heart is in the right place. In the grand scheme of things.
And it was the idea of taking a story and putting a spin on it. I love it when people do that. So that's why that was one of my first experiences with a story like that, where they'd taken an established IP and they'd evolved it. And I guess it left so much of an impression on me that I wanted to buy the bloody action figures.
I say, mate, I want to say I might have had a couple of them myself. I'm not sure, but they probably were from charity shops.
Yeah.
Because I get the impression that they probably didn't sell.
Yeah, they probably ended up in charity shops afterwards once you realise the actual figures didn't do much.
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of like action figures that do much, I'll tell you one of my most fond memories was Manta Force. Do you remember Manta Force?
I initially am saying I don't, but something in the back of my head is going, no, you do know this. Why do I know
Let me explain it to you, right? The reason why it's called Manta Force is because like the flagship is shaped like a manta, obviously. Basically, it came in a giant box, and it came as a giant spaceship. White.
Holy shit! Yo, it had loads of little ships inside it.
Yes, mate. Yes, it did.
I had that!
Yeah.
Hold up, hold up. While you're talking, I'm bringing this up. I've actually
go to eBay now. Go to eBay now.
I'm on my way, man. I'm on my way.
Have a look. And while I tell you about this, and like,
this is something that's been on the edge of my memory, but I never knew what to call it.
It's so good.
Yes, I had that.
Yes, it's so good. And like you'd hold like the engine at the top to lift the top up, and then it would have like 10 or 15 like little ships, and it would come with little men that you would put in the little ships. It had like Voltron almost. It had like an air force, a ground force, and an underwater force.
£220.
Oh, it's expensive, man, because it was quite rare.
I know so many parts to it. I mean, I was looking at it.
That's right. To get it complete. There was also Red Venom, which was like the villain ship, which was like a red version of the Manta Force thing. And then there was like the Boulder Mountain, I think it was called, which was like a base, which had like flip up parts and cannons that fired rockets everywhere and stuff. But yeah, absolutely loved this. I got Manta Force for Christmas, and I think that year my brother got something else. But then for his birthday, he got Red Venom, which was the evil version of it. So yeah, absolutely love it. All the little shit. I mean, like I was a kid, I loved Star Trek. I loved Star Wars. I loved spaceships and ship design. Thunderbirds.
It's just like a better version of Thunderbirds, man.
It is, yeah. There was actually a comic for it as well, but it wasn't like it didn't go on for long. There was never really a cartoon or anything for it, but yeah, man.
Oh man, I want to give you deep thanks on this one. That is one that's been, that's been like,
dude. I'm telling you now, when it comes to like nostalgia about kids' cartoons and kids' toys, I'm your man. Because me and my, to be honest with you, that's what me and my brother talk about the most. For the last 24 hours, I've been texting him, and he's been going, yes, this, that, and we've been relaying information to each other about all the cartoons and toys we got as a kid. So yeah, man. Man of Force was an absolute fave. I mean, we lost everything. If I remember correctly,
there were so many parts.
It's right.
Not to lose something inside about 10
because on the top you would lift the cockpit up, and there would be like free seats for the leaders, and then inside the actual hangar of the ship itself, you would have like the spaces for like the air, ground, and sea ships, and then around the perimeter, and there was like see-through plexiglass so you could see in and out of it. If you were a toy, and that's where all the pilots would sit as well, and they would be like,
I'm looking at it as you're describing it, man. It's great.
Mate, it's so good. It is fantastic. Yeah, that was one of my favorites, definitely. So, any others from you, mate?
Oh, sorry, man. I've just got to get over the shock of this. This is changing my entire outlook on life.
I know, mate. It's amazing. There's actually a pretty cheap one that's just not got a lot of stuff on it for 30 quid. Oh, that's it. Red Venom. Oh, the Red Venom plane was so sick.
Oh, it detaches in different ways, so it flies.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's like it was like everything, and it was like compact and put together.
It's got spring patterns, man.
Yeah. Fab stuff.
This has got everything that a kid would possibly want in a toy back in those eras. Yeah.
There were like little mechs, little spaceships, little tanks. It had everything.
Yeah, you could put together any sort of set pieces and all of this.
Yeah, it's great. It's absolutely greait.
Okay, so moving on.
Are you okay now?
Somewhat hesitantly, but yes, we are moving on. As I say, I've got the only other thing I can really mention in terms of toys that I got is I got a random mask toy.
Oh, which one did you get?
I got Afterburner.
Oh, which one was Afterburner?
Afterburner was the dragster. I think he showed up in one episode. And but it was the dragster where the frame would like split and it turned into a plane.
Oh.
Well, not one of the core ones.
I actually have no idea. I've never seen that before. I don't remember in the cartoon. Nope.
It's only because I was kind of like, I knew that I had a mask toy, and I actually had to go back through some of the collector's lists, go, which one did I fucking have? Because I didn't have the ones that I wanted.
Yes.
Because everyone wanted, like, if you had to own a couple of mask toys.
You wanted Thunderhawk, obviously, or Red Hawk, whatever it was called. Was it Thunderhawk that was the red car, wasn't it?
Yes, that was when Matt Tracker used to drive.
That's right. And then there was Rhino, which everyone always wanted.
Everyone also wanted the helicopter that turned into a plane.
The bad guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, Miles Mayhem.
That's it, yeah.
And maybe, what was the Rhino was the truck, wasn't it?
That's right.
And maybe that van that used to split in the centre where a turret used to come up.
Was it the black van? The black van?
Yes.
Yeah, there's the Venom one.
That was one of the bad guys, yeah. And maybe if you still had some money left to one side, you want the motorcycle that turned into a helicopter.
Yes, I definitely had the Thunderhawk red car, and my brother definitely had the Rhino and the motorcycle. Definitely. So yes.
And maybe you'd want to get the mountain base as well if you sort of like you really want to.
Never had that. We never had that.
So, because I mean, at the petrol station, it used to turn into a full-on sort of like fortress.
Yes. Okay, then. How many more have you got on your list?
Well, one final I wish I'd had.
Oh, go on then. Sorry.
Now, talking about fortresses, and this is in a very loose sense, there was always one toy that I wanted, but I never got. I actually asked for it once, but I knew that I was pushing my luck on this one.
Yeah.
I wanted the real Ghostbusters fire station.
Yes, I know. I don't think we had the fire station.
I wanted it, man.
Yeah.
Because I saw someone like once. I think it was one of my friends at school. I went around his house and to a lesser degree, I also wanted the Turtles base as well because I'd seen that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
There was something about the Ghostbusters one because it had a grid on top. It had a plastic grid where you could put the ecto slime on the top and it'd ooze through, and you could put characters underneath and let the ooze over them.
Yes.
And that was a thing. That was a thing that was quite common back in our eras where you should just get pots of slime
Yes, gun. Yes.
And we found out the hard way that this slime can actually take varnish off of a dining table.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents never forgave me on that one. Just starts playing with the slime, and apparently it's got enough alcohol or something in it that it can strip the varnish right off a mahogany table. But I really wanted to play with the slime. I wanted to put it on the grid. I wanted to watch it drip down. I wanted to cover it with Venkman, because who else are you going to slime? But no, I never got that. I feel that loss made me the man I am today.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, from that then, I'm going to mention my final toy that I got that I was I loved, and that was my Boglin. Do you remember Boglins, Mark?
Oh, those are the things you could put your hand up inside them and play
the hand puppets.
Yeah.
Me and my brother both got one, and they actually, like, on a Kickstarter, re-released them about 4 years ago. I'm so gutted. I would have bought one again, and now they're extortionately priced again. But yeah, you put your hand in it, and you could control, like, the eyes and the mouth, like, with all your fingers and thumbs. And it was like it came in like a cardboard box that was a cage.
Yeah, I remember
awesome.
that. Yeah,
it's so awesome.
With a little warning sign on the front and everything.
Yes. So, you were going to mention some more games consoles.
Oh yeah, bringing it back to that. I mean, it was after my NES that I kind of turned firm Sega, because
you turned your back on Nintendo.
Oh, as we know, and as the adverts told us, Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Indeed.
And I started off with the Master System 2.
Oh yes. I never owned a Master System. Again, I missed the 8-bits completely, apart from the Game Boy. I used to play the Master System at my friend's house.
Master System 2 had when I first got the Master System, I didn't actually get any games with it.
Mm-hmm.
As in, I didn't get any cartridge games anyway.
Yes.
Because it had a game built in.
Yes. What game was it? Alex Kidd, by chance?
Alex Kidd in Miracle World.
Yes.
Which, for the purposes of this podcast, I rewatched gameplay of it.
Yes.
Holy shit, man!
What?
You know when you watch a game and you go, I spent an exorbitant amount of time playing this game. It's like far more than I feel that the game, like, not that the game deserved it. It was an okay game.
In terms of like perceptive time, right? Just think about how much time you've put into Overwatch in your lifetime. It's quite possible that you put that much time into this game as well. It's quite possible.
It's a possibility. So.
That's worrying, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the mechanics are somewhat simpler. I mean, this was a game where the boss battles were based on what they called it in game was janking, but it's paper, scissors, stone.
Yes.
And the pattern was always the same. So after a couple of rounds of trial and error, you could work out how to defeat every single boss. And it just pretty much turned into an endurance battle because no save states, no memory cards. But I've seen some like full gameplay lengths online, and people complete it in an hour.
Yes, most games that we had as kids that we spent weeks, months playing, you can complete in an hour. It's
well,
crazy.
Once you know what you're doing and you know the mechanics, you can just fly through them.
They're just memory games, essentially. You have to play them through over and over again to remember everything. I'll give you another quick example. Aladdin on the Mega Drive, which I recently played through on a collection, 40 minutes.
The thing is, Disney in that era made some bangers of games, didn't they?
Oh, they did, yeah, they did.
I mean, Lion King was another good one, wasn't it? So
it was, but But it was also like incredibly difficult.
Oh,
They purposely increased the difficulty on stage 3 because of the rental market. Did you know that? It was actually to appease Blockbuster. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, so to keep people renting longer.
That's right, yeah. That's right.
Ah, sneaky.
So what other games did you have on the Master System?
Well, after a while, I eventually obtained Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes. Ironically, for you, Master System Sonic is the first Sonic that I played.
Yeah.
And even though it plays like very differently to the Mega Drive ones, because the Mega Drive versions are faster, I really love the Master System versions, man. I actually played through them again on maybe the 3DS or the Wii. Not sure.
I say the Master System versions were they were my first experience of Sonic.
Yeah.
But all I remember when I first started playing it is how disappointed I was that there were no Loop-a-Loops.
Yes, that's right.
Because the processor couldn't handle the rotation of the pixels.
Well, it didn't have the speed of the Mega Drive version. I actually had the reverse experience because I played the Master System version first, and then when I played the Mega Drive version, I was like, "Oh, what? You can do loop-the-loops? That's
this changes everything."
You can like run through the levels so fast you complete it in seconds.
You can actually move past the camera. You can get.
Oh yes, on that first level.
Yeah.
But like the Master System games are quite quaint, but they have a special place in my heart. Actually.
Yeah. I mean, I played a couple of Master System games. I think I had Enduro Racer.
Yes.
And Operation Wolf, I think it was called.
That was a light gun game in the arcades originally.
Then maybe I'm thinking of something else. But
no. There was the Master System port.
Oh, okay.
Because the Master System had its own light gun, like the NES light gun, and yeah.
Oh yeah. It wasn't really a patch on the. But yeah, my Master System experience was very short. I didn't have much of a collection with the Master System. I actually really started building up a collection when I got the Mega Drive 2.
Yes.
So, and emphasis on the 2, because that was the one that used to come like packaged with Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Games 2, which we've discussed on previous podcasts.
Have we?
Potentially, or we're going to discuss it in the future.
I can't remember. We really need to create a library of all the things we've talked about so we don't repeat ourselves.
This is true.
So, did you get the Mega Drive 2 for Christmas?
Yes, I did.
Year? Oh, wow. Nice.
And the Mega Drive 2 was a little bit more smoothie, a little bit more swish.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it had red buttons on it. And came, as I say, with proper Sonic the Hedgehog, as I like to think about it back in the day.
Yes.
And it also came with Mega Games 2, which had Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Revenge of Shinobi.
Oh, yes.
Which, compared to Mega Games 1, which I
know,
that compilation, I think it was Columns and World Cup 1990 and something else. And
Hang On. Super Hang On is very good in my opinion. I would probably say that Columns is fine. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But World Cup Italia 90 is garbage.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a bunch of licenses they own. They go, okay, well, they're not selling. Let's package them together and maybe they'll sell better together.
Yeah.
But Mega Games 2 was a gift to the gamers.
Yes. That's what I actually got my Mega Drive after my SNES. I think I might have traded it with someone, not sure. And it came with Mega Games 2, and that was
that spurred me to buy a second controller so my brother could play with me.
Yeah.
And I always played as the dwarf in Golden Axe.
He was the best one.
Yes, he was. He was the fucking best one. So, but also, this also led to a year later where for Christmas I got Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition.
Ooh, now we're talking.
Yeah. Now, this was the rendition of Street Fighter 2, which came with both Champion Edition and Turbo. And it had the ability to turn up the turbo in the Turbo Edition, so the game would run even faster. This might be a controversial opinion, but I never played Turbo. Couldn't play it. It was far too fast for me, because as I say, at this time, I was still a dabbler. I was not a hardcore gamer. I hadn't had you to sit me down and teach me how to do a Shoryuken.
Yeah, so, there's an interesting story around Street Fighter 2 for the SNES and Street Fighter Champion Edition for the Mega Drive. Because if I remember correctly, for Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition on the Mega Drive, you didn't need to put a code in to play the 10-star speed for Turbo, right? You just did it. Is that right?
With a star system, you could just...
Yeah, but you had to put a code in to increase the speed for the Champion version. So, Street Fighter 2... I'm going to talk about Street Fighter in a minute as well, ironically. Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo was an exclusive to Nintendo. And then Street Fighter 2 Turbo was also an exclusive to the Super Nintendo. And, I remember at the time, all the magazines, actually Games Master, multi-format magazines, Street Fighter 2 was the best thing ever. And everyone was like, when is the Mega Drive going to get a Street Fighter 2 port? And most of the time the answer was, I don't know, or never. And I read once that apparently Capcom got around the exclusivity deal by doing Champion Edition rather than Turbo. So Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the SNES actually came with Champion Edition as well. It's just that they repackaged the game, ported it, and reversed the USP, let's say, into Champion Edition so they could release it for the Mega Drive. So, yeah. That's cool. You got that for Christmas. I remember the artwork could be an awesome with Ryu on the front.
Yeah, with the blue sort of flames coming off him, and he's charging up. And there is some sort of family video, camcorder footage of me opening this present and just losing my mind a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I know it exists.
Wow!
I stand by it. It was awesome at the time.
Well, I have a very similar story to that actually. This is why I said to wait for the consoles because. I figured you'd talk about a Mega Drive. So, are you finished with the Mega Drive, by the way?
Yeah.
Any other games you got for Christmas for the Mega Drive? Or is
nothing that really. Oh wait, no, actually, I did get a Menacer.
You got the Menacer?
Yeah, I got a Menacer, man. It was great.
What games did you get with the Menacer?
Well, you got like a compilation cartridge, and it had things like Toe Jam and
yeah.
And you had like different peripheral parts you could click onto it, so you could turn it into a bazooka, or you could actually have it as a pistol, or like
I never had the Super Scope for the SNES. Never. Well, what can I say? I'm jealous of you now. I always wanted the Super Scope. Always. I remember on Games Master they had Vic Reeves on it to use the Super Scope, and it was like a bazooka, like as you described what the Menacer was kind of like. But yeah, Street Fighter 2. That's a game. That's a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, people that know me around here know me as like the Street Fighter guy. You know, it's been a very important franchise to me. You
were pretty much my sensei when it came to that game.
We came to Street Fighter, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, the Game Boy was my foray into like console gaming. And I tell you, I can remember exactly the day I played Street Fighter in the arcades. It was like Turbo in the arcades, and I played Blanca and just sat there mashing electricity. And I asked for a Super Nintendo with Street Fighter 2 Turbo for Christmas. And I actually remember, like, because I used to do this all the time, because I was so naughty, when my parents went out, I used to go into their bedroom and raid the cupboards to see what Christmas presents they had bought me. I'm so sorry, Mum, if you're listening to this. I remember one time I saw Scorponok, Transformers G1 Scorponok in there, and I got so excited, and I was so disappointed that it was for my brother when he got it. I'm so upset. Years later, it still upsets me. Anyway, and like, yeah, Street Fighter was like the biggest thing, wasn't it? It was like the biggest thing when we were kids, and like to finally have a home version to play. Oh, the arguments me and my brother had, Mark. I can remember like don't do throws. You know, don't do the same.
Cheating.
don't do the same special move more than once.
You can't do the 100-hand slap and move across the level. That's cheating.
That's cheating. That's right. Don't do Guile's knee in the corner over and over again. I can remember me and my brother like having so many arguments playing against each other in that game when we just cheese each other out because we were crap.
Was that the Street Fighter that had the Redizzy in it?
Yeah, Street Fighter 2 had Redizzies. Street Fighter 2 Turbo did have Redizzies, but they weren't as easy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, crazy games. I'll never forget seeing the Nintendo official magazine, NMS as it was called at the time, complete guide to Street Fighter, and it taught you how to play the game, special moves. I spent £5 on it. Like at the time, magazines cost £1 or £2, so the idea of spending £5 on a magazine was like incredible. And just practicing Dragon Punches for hours.
Oh, I will be honest with the whole sort of like Street Fighter control system. That set a standard, for gaming controls in fighting games. In terms of the quarter circles and the forward to down forward punch. I still remember the first time I managed to successfully pull off a Dragon Punch around your house, and you go, "Well, that's good. Do it 20 times in a row."
Yeah, that's what I used to do though.
Yeah.
I used to practice. I used to plug two controllers in, and I'd have a dummy and just move them to the end of the screen, and I'd move my Ken to the other end of the screen and just do. And if I can't do a Dragon Punch from one end of the screen to the other, more practice needed. You know.
Yep. And that's how you taught me as well.
Oh man, like playing that game. There will definitely be a Street Fighter episode at some point. I'm telling you now.
Oh yeah,
that game is too important to me. The anime as well, but let's not get into that.
And now. Everything that followed.
Yeah. So, that was great. Any quick notable mentions, Mark, from your list, or are you pretty much done there?
The only other thing I mentioned is sort of like I had a pretty much running trend of books throughout my life and throughout my young life when I was a kid. From the early 90s, I was into horror. And my parents started me on the old Goosebumps series. And I progressively built up quite a collection of the R.L. Stine Goosebumps.
Yes.
And one thing I did like about these books, even in the first runs, they had sequels to earlier books, which allow for stories to continue and to develop characters further, like the likes of Monster Blood. Night of the Living Dummy and The Haunted Mask, and this was my first experience with horror. And this kind of laid a groundwork for the kind of horror I'd look for later in life. I mean, these were very simple stories. They were child friendly and they were very easy to read. There was nothing ever really graphically violent ever happened in them, and more often than not, they barely went above 100 pages. But they were easily consumed, and there were shitloads of them. And it also, because R.L. Stine also wrote for Point Horror, which we've mentioned previously. I actually graduated to Point Horror after a while and started reading those.
Yes.
And I will be honest, Point Horror, I think that was more aimed towards a female demographic than a male one. Because it had a lot of like girls and boys in college.
Yeah.
And very basic storylines. And nonetheless, I consumed as much as I could because Point Horror seemed to turn up in my school library all the time, despite the fact I went to an all-boys school. So, yeah, that kind of set the tone for the kind of horror. And then when I finally actually started exploring proper horror, when I say proper horror, I mean the likes of like true horror, the likes of Evil Dead, Hellraiser, the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons.
Yes.
All of that. That's, yeah.
Well, we'll no doubt get into those another time, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I have to say, Mark, I have a little sequel story to tell you very quickly before we we need to start knocking on this on the head soon. It's a sequel to a story you told in a previous podcast, and I've actually considered a podcast that we have recorded and not released yet at this point. I've considered editing it out and making you tell it again, but this podcast has gone on so long now, I'm not going to do that. It's a sequel to the story you told about when you asked for Die Hard Trilogy but got Alien Trilogy.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, when you got a crap Christmas present. So do you want me to tell you what my worst Christmas present of all time was?
What was that?
What was the video game that we played most as teenagers? Can you tell me?
That's a tricky one because there were a lot of them.
No, there's one, mate. Come on. One game. It's a multiplayer game. On the N64, it's No Mercy.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry.
WCW versus NW No Mercy. Me and Mark, wrestling fans, as kids, massive wrestling fans, because it was the era to be wrestling fans, the 90s.
Yeah.
And, you know, the feud with our friends, Jay and Wayne, you know.
Yeah. I still remember it was in...
Jericho and Jericho versus Dean Malenko and Chris
Benoit. That was for Revenge. That was in Revenge, wasn't it?
That was in Revenge. Well, hold tight. Don't get too far, because I've got to tell you this story, right? So... WCW versus NWO No Mercy. That was like the game of our teenage years.
Yeah.
And one of the things about that game was that before we played that game, we played WWF Warzone on PS1, and its sequel Attitude. And the developers of WCW versus NWO Revenge, Aki, they had like the best engine by far out there. And the WWF wrestling games were nowhere near as good. On the Warzone versus No Mercy, it was no contest, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it was 1999, so like I was 16, you were 17, and it was about this point when Jericho had left WCW for WWF. AKI had not lost, probably not renewed their contract with WCW. WCW was my preferred federation, mainly because it was the one I watched. And then what happened at this point is that AKI, the developers of this fantastic game, of this fantastic WCW game, then made a WWF game. WWF WrestleMania 2000. Which I seem to think either you or Lawton got for Christmas, right?
Wasn't me.
It was Lawton.
Yeah.
And what happened is I was... such a WCW fanboy that even though the gameplay and engine in No Mercy was clearly the best out there, I didn't ask for WWF WrestleMania 2000 for Christmas. Do you know what I asked for Christmas?
What did you get, man?
WCW Mayhem.
Ooh.
And I remember calling you, or Lawton, or someone, and me, I've been playing WCW Mayhem on N64, which is by EA, by the way, all day, thinking it was okay, I liked it, and I called you up see how your day was going, and you were telling me how you were loving this game, WWF WrestleMania 2000, and I was like, oh yeah, it's all right, I'm sure, but it's not WCW, is it? You got to play Mayhem. And then I came round your house, we played Mayhem for 5 minutes, and everyone went, this game is crap. Let's put WrestleMania 2000 on, and then we put WrestleMania 2000 on, and it was the same engine as Revenge.
Same moves, same setups. Everything was just a bit more evolved, wasn't it?
And I hated you so much. I hated you. I hated Lawton. I hated WCW. I hated the N64. I hated everything. So sad, mate. So I had to. I don't think I ever sold Mayhem, but I ended up getting. I think I traded in games and got WrestleMania 2000 for the N64 that week because it was just too depressing. I could not handle being left out. Fortunately, WrestleMania 2000 had a creator wrestler mode, didn't it? So we just created our WCW wrestlers in it anyway.
Yeah, Benoit and Malenko.
Yeah.
Horseman for life.
But I tell you, man, I can still remember calling you and like you and Lawton telling me how amazing WrestleMania 2000 was, and like just thinking it is going to be better. I just knew. I knew it was coming. I knew that my Christmas present was crap. Because the game was crap.
I've just got images of the night from Last Crusader. You chose poorly.
I did choose poorly. I did. I chose very, very poorly. Oh, dear. So, yeah, we should definitely consider wrapping this up soon. I think, dude, we've been talking for a long time about this. Maybe it's the beer. Maybe it's the nostalgia. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the Christmas cheer, but...
I don't know about you, but I'm still scrolling pictures of Manta Force, man.
I've been doing it for years, man. Trust me.
I'm actually kind of wondering, can I take a little bit out of my savings and buy one of these?
Don't start. I'm telling you now. It's a slippery slope. So I just want to say, actually, that like doing research for this overall episode has been like so much fun. Aside from watching all of the cartoons on YouTube, there's something else I've been doing, Mark, that I think you might be able to relate to. I found old volumes of the Argos catalogue online.
Oh, classic.
And just, when I can remember as a kid, just going through them over and over again, just looking at the toys, ticking the ones I wanted over and over and over and over again, asking my mum to do it. Oh, dear.
Something about, I've always felt that Bill Bailey summed it up best.
What did he say?
Oh, he referred to it as the laminated book of dreams.
Yeah.
And why is it laminated? So it can catch the tears that fall from all the things that you can't own. And yeah, I do remember that is for any British kid is being stood in Argos, flicking through those laminated pages with the pencil in the other hand and your little slip of paper. So you can write down the 7-digit number and tap it into the stock take and go, do they have it in stock?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love Argos.
Online, you can find like the old catalogs quite easily. So, yeah, I spent quite a bit of time just going through like the winter Christmas versions, let's say, just to see like what toys were out and then how much they were, because they were so cheap, mate.
They also were smart enough to always put the toys at the back, so you had to flick past all the gardening, all the lawnmowers, all the microwaves, until you get to the toy section that was always at the end.
Oh, yes. So, yes. Anything else to add to that, Mark?
I don't know, man. I think we've gone backwards and forwards on that one.
We have absolutely hammered this topic today, that's for sure. Oh dear. This could be the longest segment we've recorded.
Potentially so.
So that's it. The podcast is finished. You can follow me at writer GM Groves on Twitter /X, whatever your poison is, Facebook and Instagram. Mark?
If you promise to buy me a Manta Force, I'll come round your house personally.
If you want to read my work, please check out the website in the podcast episode description. There you will find articles, reviews, and maybe some fiction. Maybe I will finally have got it on there. So we're going to be taking a break over the holiday period, a couple of weeks off. Because this is our first attempt at a podcast, we actually recorded things in advance. So we will be publishing an episode of Already Recorded, which it will be on January the 8th, which is our Cormac McCarthy special. This is one of my favorite authors who sadly passed away in 2023. I would have put the episode up in 2023, but we decided to try and be relevant and do a Christmas special. So
look at us keeping it seasonal.
Trying to, yeah. It's something we need to work on next year. I mean, I would have liked to have done a Godzilla episode, but we can skip that and do it next year because there's another Godzilla film coming out. So
no, because Shin just got released in Zero, like -1.
Not Shin, -1. So yeah, get ready. We're doing a Godzilla episode next year. Warning you in advance.
Nice.
So without further ado, wherever you are, whatever you celebrate, happy holidays. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Catch you all later.